Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Scale Riders podcast episode. I'm your host, 65 Lokes. We are at episode number 209. I am excited because I am joined by my guest, first time on the podcast, Kristen, also known on Instagram as Lionheart Motoring. What's up? All the way from SoCal, California. How you doing?
Good, good. How are you doing? It's an
Yeah,
honor.
I'm doing well. There's just so much I want to get into. I want to ask. I kind of want to just tell you, I still remember back SoCal Open. This is October of 2021. Um, I remember that day because you had gotten an award that day at that event.
My
And
that was my second show, I believe. Yeah, my second show ever.
all right, cool. That was going to be one of my questions. Was this your first or second show?
No, because my first show was Orange Con of 2021.
Yeah.
Because I had just started, I had a little accident, a car accident that was back in April of 2021. And it was after my recovery, I started building. And by SoCal 2021, that was my first appearance, first show, first time winning. It was a lot.
Dang, that's crazy. So with like model building, I mean, when I saw your work and where you got gotten, because like I remember going to SoCal Open, it had, there wasn't any shows because of the pandemic. And then
Mhm.
SoCal Open happens, but I had gone to it prior before. And this year I was there vending, and sometimes it gets tough for me to like just walk around and really check everything out. So I didn't really get to see anything until the end, and then I saw the Porsche with the award, and I was like, dang. And I started to see your work, and I was like tripping. I was like, dude, like for me, when I see engine work and detail and everything, it's very intimidating for me, because that's not my field, like my background. I admire it and I love it. And I was just going, dude, like that's a whole nother level right there.
And it's crazy because right now, like I look back on the wiring and the detail work I did then, and it's nothing compared to what I've advanced to. And it's like
Dang.
I look at that now and I'm like, how that like were people just being nice? Like, and that was the thing.
Mhm.
Like, when I got my first, like I'd say like my first probably 5 awards or so with the
Mhm.
with just the Porsche GT1. That was my reaction after every show. I walked away like, okay, are they being nice to me? Is it because I'm a girl? And these people would come around. They're like, no, it's like you being new to modeling. They're like the amount of detail and the way that you've targeted this. They're like you're years beyond where most people start off. So it's interesting, even looking back on it and seeing, the lack of compared to the amount of detail I've been able to build up on just within what a year and a half almost. So
Dang, what a trip. And like, you mentioned you were in an accident prior. Is that what kind of led to this for you to get into scale model building?
so what it all pretty much started with, if you know, you obviously but most people don't, Scale Freaks, which is Daniel Valencia. I met him, he was one of my coworkers. I met him when I was working for a company called Infinity Health, where we were doing COVID testing. And basically, for people that know the way I work, I come in running with, just taking on anything that comes my way, especially in the workforce. It's like when you see a problem, I'm quick to react, come up with solutions. And I started to really stand out as a team player during the time I was working for that job. So eventually we got sent out to a location in East LA. And just because I was traveling from Calabasas, Daniel was in, I believe, Van Nuys. Yeah, Van Nuys. We were able to carpool. And it was through that we started realizing, actually, Daniel kind of realized that there was an interest with me and cars. I didn't know at all during the time I was working with Daniel that he was doing scale modeling, but it kind of picked up where we're in the car mid conversation, you see a classic car or a nice exotic go by, and mid conversation, I'm like, oh my God. And I start talking about cars, and Daniel's driving like, what the hell? Like, this girl's just as obsessed about cars as I am. So that's what started the, I guess, acknowledgement that, okay, this is like a car girl. but at work I'm very like serious, and it's go time. So basically there was a car accident that I was involved in with my mom. It was a rear-ended accident, and I didn't know it, but it basically, it's a long story, but it led to a dissection of the carotid artery. And by the time I got, and it seemed like a minor accident, but it was a hard impact. And it was on the 101 to the 405, and the freeway came to a stop, and then we got hit by a 16-year-old. So I'm sure she was on the phone, but who knows? So basically, come to find out, I was working for another month, not knowing that I was on the verge of having a stroke or dying at any point. And eventually I was working closely with Daniel, but the whole time I was hiding that there was all this, pins and needles literally on half of my brain going down to my neck. And I'm ignoring it. I'm still showing up to work and taking Tylenol. And eventually I was doing an assignment, and Daniel looked, I said, hey, I can't figure this out in this Excel document. Can you just help me? And he kind of looked at me and he's like, what's wrong? And I bursted in tears because I was under so much pain, but he still didn't see it. I walked out of the room, cried, came back, and he tears in my eyes, and he's like, what's wrong? And at that point I was like, I'm having pins and needles across half my brain, and this is what's going on. And he's like, you need to leave now. The crazy part is I took 3 times to go into the ER for them to do a CTA scan with iodine because I have other health issues. So they finally did the iodine to find out that I had the dissection, and then 3 aneurysms going basically from the base of my skull and up. So I was on like ICU for, it was about a month, and they were able to do a procedure where they put in stents. I nearly bled out like 3 times. And by the time I got out, I was having all these issues. Like, for a lot of people, I don't know, when you've gone through having aneurysms, a lot of times if you're in the hospital and you get out, you have a lot of stroke symptoms. And that's exactly what happened to me. I remember things like the crookedness in my face, and I had lost a lot of weight. There was a lot of little battles. I couldn't stand on my own, couldn't shower, couldn't live alone anymore. For a short term, it was a little difficult. And I realized that during my process of recovery, I was having issues, obviously shaky hands. As I get nervous, they get worse, and my blurred vision. And those were 2 things that were really getting to me after this accident and getting out of the ICU and my surgeries. And Daniel eventually brought over scale modeling and was like, hey, give it a go, and kind of like talk to me about the different benefits of scale modeling, how it, changes your brain and the way that you problem solve and all. And he kind of knew how much I love art and was able to, and cars as well, and kind of started to teach me those ropes. So it was around that time that he brought a Formula One car because he knew I was obsessed with Formula One. And eventually, I don't know what got into me, but I was like, I really want to build a Porsche. He said, what Porsche? I said, a GT1. And he's like, I have 2 of those kits. Like, I'll give it to you. He explained the basics of building, how to clean, sprue, and how to hold a knife and not get cut, because I was on a bunch of blood thinners, and he kind of let me be. And anytime I had questions, obviously a lot of questions, I'd be on the phone with him, or I would wait until, he either came over to my house or I went over to his house, and he would show me and demonstrate like, hey, this is the proper way of doing this. And then he would hand it to me and go, now you do it to your own. And it kind of created this balance of like, yeah, scale modeling, even though it takes a lot of time away from other things, it's amazing, and it's something that I don't want to give up or walk away from, because I'm such a car fanatic. And it's like going through that process and being able to communicate with all these people that are fellow modelers in the hobby. It's like insane. It's a whole nother community of people that like you can bond with, and like, especially for the automotive, like everyone has one thing in common. It's like we obsess about cars that we probably would dream and love to own. So it's cool.
Dang, that's crazy. Yeah, I didn't even know that. No, that's all good.
Sorry.
I had no idea. I mean, I'm glad, you're here, you're doing the podcast, and I hope you're doing well, everything, like physically, mentally, everything. So, and when you started getting into the model building, were you just tripping out as far as like that there was a community that big?
It was crazy. So Daniel was like debating on taking me to my first show before having me build my first model. And there was something about it that I was like, I'm probably not going to appreciate the way that people build and the time that they put in unless I've done it myself. So even just that little factor, it's like being able to build a model and then go to a show and present it. And it's like you're a part of the community that's competing and there and displaying art. It was a different and fun experience.
Yeah, no, it's cool because now we see you actively at all these shows throughout Southern California. And it's one of those things when you go to the model shows, you meet people for the first time. Sometimes you see people and you don't like break the ice, or everyone just kind of sticks with their friends or crew. But then after a while you start to wander off and you mingle and you cross paths with people, and or the interactions from Instagram lead to like linking up at the show. And now it's always fun to see people that you already know now, like at all the different shows. And I saw you not too long ago, earlier this year, at NNL West up in San Jose, Northern California. And then after that, in February, you were out in Ventura at the Model Fest as
And that's
well.
that's crazy too, because NNL made history, which is crazy because they've never had a female win adults. And I think
Dang.
they've had this year and last year that they had a female win juniors. And
Oh, that's cool. Congratulations.
thank you. I'm like, but I had to even ask because I know that that's a show that's been around forever. And
Yeah.
it's crazy too, because like there were what, like over, you were there, like over like 250 plus
hmm Yeah.
models. And that moment that they were giving out that award, I'm like, there's no way, like, and like the fact that when you hear your name, like I think I've gone to like 18, about roughly 18 shows, and I have yet to lose or to like
Yeah.
not walk away with a trophy. So it's like that alone, that little like rookie streak or whatever to call it, it's like
hmm
it's insane to be that person that you go to
Yeah.
a show and every time it's like you're brand new to this hobby and you're
hmm
walking away with a trophy. Like you come back again and again and you get people that are fellow modelers that used to wipe out their category and they're like, oh shit, like we should take her in the parking lot and beat her up now. And I'm just like, no, 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 like don't be nice, but
Yeah.
it's cool because it's like it's kind of put some heat on the community where the
Mhm.
guys are used to certain things and it's kind of starting to advance, and I'm starting to,
Yeah.
the way that I love cars and race cars and Porsche, and it's
Mhm.
I haven't yet to see after I did the Sauber. I can show it right here.
Yeah,
This
let's
is
check it
like
out.
my best wiring for an engine. But this one right here, like that moment of nailing little details for the engine and then going to a show and placing it down, it's like it's crazy, and it's it's like it's often I'm like losing the right words, but it's really cool when you go online and you don't really see scale models of Saubers that are highly especially that come up and they're like, how did you do this? How did you do that? And I'm willing to take time, especially at shows. If I see someone's actually interested, I'm willing to take that time to explain so much to them. And then all of a sudden, like on Facebook, I'll get people that are taking screenshots and sending me, they're like, dude, hey, look at these people are coming after your Sauber. And it's
Hmm.
cool to see people in the community trying new things or stepping up because they're like, dude, this girl's doing it. Why can't I? And it's
Yeah.
like everyone can. You just have to have the patience to not get frustrated and just, keep your initial vision in mind.
No, definitely. I mean, a lot of the like the stuff that you're doing, it's definitely high level stuff. The detail, the scale, and just things that aren't being done. And I mean, you are making a lot of noise, and it's good when you have someone that steps in and it starts busting out with cars because it's always exciting to see something new. And at the same time, we want to see it elevate. But not only that, you're also representing, for female model builders out there. And it's just another thing, a big plus for the model community as well, to just see you be a part of it, but also see you grow with it. And then every build, it just keeps elevating more and more and more. Like the one that's crazy that I saw there is the one. Do you call it? Is it called the bull bug?
Yeah.
There we go. That
That's
one's
that's the
so cool.
only that's the only one I have a solid like custom title for. Everything else, I'm like the Ford, I don't know. It's like the Golf, the Sauber, it's like, but that's the first one that I've really gone all out for. And it was like right before Ken Block had an accident that I kind of decided to take this kit that had been sitting around forever. It was actually a friend of mine's that he wanted painted blue, and it just sat around my house because it's hard to work on different things when you're building for competitions. And eventually I said, okay, if I need to do something custom that's going to be insane to kind of honor Ken Block, why not do a Pikes Peak hill climber and just go all out? Take a bug, put, rear engine. It's a V12 double turbo. So it's interesting. And, one thing I've been building on, and you can see it through like the generations of my builds, but it's really being able to do things that are realistic, and then being able to, I know that this one came after doing like the roll cage on my 944, which is my real 1-to-1 scale car. So being able to implement what I've done to my real race car into that bug as well, it just adds this little awesome wow factor.
Dang, I'm gonna show some photos for the
Yeah,
viewers
you're good.
here. So I don't know. I love seeing these progress photos because you really get to see and like a hint of just the work, because I know that there's a lot of hours invested in here, and it's just cool to be able to see all these things that go into the build right here. And man, it is dope. Like
Hey,
I just love the way this looks. This looks cool.
that belongs to your set of what you sell. I remember being at a show where you came out with that PE little logos, car
Uh-huh.
logos.
The emblems and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, it drove me insane. I think I have so many stacked away that I'm like, yeah, I didn't even expect like that, even doing that build and coming up with doing a V12 and a Volkswagen Porsche crossover. It's kind of, that whole process is really crazy. And there's definitely a few people that build real 1-to-1 scale custom cars that I use as inspiration for this as well. So it's
Yeah, I really love the hood. I love how you cut that out. That looks amazing. And then the final piece right here.
yeah.
That's
I don't know
tight.
how people feel about that, but for people that are, military buffs or history buffs, they know.
Yeah, this is awesome.
But it kind of goes with, Porsche, Volkswagen, and their history. So it's cool.
That's nice. And then not too long ago, I saw one of your videos. You went out to a show, you saw a bug, and you had the car right there. How is it when you go to a 101 scale show and you bring your models? Like, are you showcasing, your build as you're walking around, or how is it? Because I'm pretty sure people that stands out if you have it out.
Yeah. So for that particular show was the first time that I went to Griffith Park, and they were having a little get together there. I didn't expect to see so many Volkswagen bugs. I happened to have my baby with me, and I knew that day I wanted to go out and at some point film content and get pictures, but I didn't expect, for that day to carry out the way it did. So, I was walking around the show, and I went with Daniel that day, and I had the Volkswagen in the car. And as we're walking through, this guy, AJ, he's from Hawaii. He rolls up with a bagged custom Volkswagen bug, and right as he's approaching us, he literally just drops to the floor and just sits there and like it's almost like his little hello to us, and then rises up and keeps on driving. So I immediately knew with seeing certain details, I'm like, okay, that's the person that I want to target for this show, and bring out my car and kind of get a little bit of content and just have some fun, meet some people. So it was a really good way to meet a show that normally you're just kind of walking around keeping to yourself. But just that moment of people seeing, a tiny scale car in their hand. And I guess like maybe a female walking through a car show as well, it definitely drew a lot of attention. But it was just cool. It was cool to have that, my Volkswagen out, and to target someone that had, just rear engine, similar car, just completely different styles and modifications. So
Yeah, dang, that's cool. This build, how long did it take you from beginning to completion?
honestly, because I wasn't working at that time and I was working on it every single day, I want to say about 2.5 months or so, maybe less, but roughly about that time. But that's working daily, like every single day, and chopping and laying things out, and like just making sure that details are layered. And it was a pain. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, there's quite a few times that I wanted to cry during this build, but as you see it kind of progressing and coming together, it
Mhm.
it turned out to be amazing.
Dang, yeah, this thing's dope. I mean,
I love
for the
it.
viewers, like when you see this at person, if you have a chance to, see this at a show, I mean, it's another thing. Like just seeing that in person, it's crazy. And I mean, you've been mostly traveling, through the Southern California, NorCal, but at some point I'm pretty sure, whether if it's this year or even next year, I know you're going to be traveling out of California because
I
people need
the
to see these cars.
Yeah, like the guys in Texas are always hitting me up, and Chester. There's quite a few people that stay within our little community that you know of.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of guys in Texas, quite a few that are heading out to Utah soon for GSL that
Yeah,
kind of have been inviting and being like, "Girl, just come out, don't
come
miss it."
through.
They're like, "Come out and learn," because they're like, "This is something that so many people are gathering in one location for." I know it's the last one of like for GSL in Utah, it's the last one
Yeah,
of those shows. And a lot of people are like, just come out and learn, because you're going to see models that are going to wipe, like people that spend years working on models instead of just a few months, and
yeah.
kind of seeing that difference too. And it's like, I'm all about going and learning and, networking more, because it's like you'll learn so many things. I mean, I know even through Dutch, it was something so simple, but I remember when I first scale modeling, and with my shaking hands, it was a real issue, because anytime I wanted to use super glue, I would go put something with super glue on. By the time it's drying, I've already moved 5 or 6 times, and I'm like, I can't do this. And it was Dutch one day that came up to me at a show. He's like, have you ever tried UV glue? And I'm like, what? I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, Michael sells the UV glue. Go try it out and let me know what you think. And those little things, it's like, if it wasn't for going and speaking and kind of networking and talking to other people and going, how the hell did you do that? And having them explain that, you get more knowledge and little like secrets that some people kind of keep. And it's nice when you
Mhm.
come across people that are willing to share it, because they want the community to step up their game and
Yeah,
progress.
that's dope. Yeah, shout outs to Dutch. He's awesome. Him and Daniel. I mean, both those guys are they're awesome dudes. Dutch he's helped me a lot with parts and stuff. Even like I don't 3D print or anything, but whenever I need something, Dutch is always on the clutch. Like, I got you. So shout outs to him. Like he's mad cool, and he has suggestions. He's always trying to help out as well.
And there's quite a few people in the community too that have done a lot to kind of like help guide or teach, or like I'll see, like even right now there's builds behind me that were gifted to me. I have two from Daniel, which was right before I started building, which is a McLaren F1 Golf, which I love, and then an F1 Ferrari, which I love. And then at one point, Willie even gifted a little lowrider. And I started looking at that and I'm like, how the hell did he nail this type of artwork? So it's also making me start to realize like, okay, there's a lot of things I haven't experienced with yet. And that's why if you look at the series of my builds, each time there's some new technique I'm targeting. And if you saw on the bug too, it's leading to more and more custom work because I want to be able to get to the point that I can paint and feel comfortable and start doing like crazy custom liveries and not be scared. And I'm working on that. That's why the difference between when I look at the way that the 4GT is painted, which is the first time I ever did my custom livery, versus, I have to be so careful. I'd be getting yelled at right now by Daniel for holding my models like this. It's okay.
Dang.
Versus something like this, where it's like you see a lot less mistakes. And even the front grille, it's like BMW kidney inspired. So, but it's like, me, it's not just like, it's funny too, like even doing the 4GT, there's ammunition, like actual bullets that are the gold little sections in here. So it's like each time I'm trying to like pick up new techniques, and I don't care about placing it to get an award. I just care about really stepping up, like you said, stepping up that next build and making sure that at least what I'm walking away with is some new technique that I have under my belt that I'm looking back on like, okay, I've accomplished that. What's next? And that's why even with the Sauber, it was like tackling wiring. I was so scared of wiring because that was my second build. And I'm like, okay, get over it. Like learn a little bit about how to do wiring and just target it all out. Because, and then like, look at the reaction, and people started out. I remember going to NNL and I had a guy come up, he's like studying the Sauber. He was like, how did you get references of the engine? And I'm like, okay, number one, I'm like the box, but I'm like, the other thing, I'm like, oh, if you just search this on Google and you start looking at these images, I'm like, you'll find some crazy things. He's like, okay, he's like, I'm going to pull my software out and start building it. I'm like, yes. Like right on. So it's cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool. Like everything now, like, when I see your photos, it's like there's more things that are just gonna click for myself as a viewer, that it's like your storyline, and you're just creating more into your storyline with your builds. It's like when I see the bull bug, I go, dang, like that's a whole other level compared to obviously like the first ones, right? But now I'm like thinking, dude, like I already know there's gonna be something on another level than the bull bug.
There's something I'm working on right now, and like I think that's a big thing. I don't like the word gatekeeping, but I definitely like the progress of not displaying and sharing what you're building on. I think when I was newer, it was a lot of it was trying to prove to people like, no, I'm building on my own. Don't question me. I have a family of artists. I myself am like grew up with family photography, so it's like painting, art, it's all kind of programmed in me. And it's it's like just being able to kind of remind yourself, like I come from a family of jewelers and all these little things where it's like I have to kind of remind myself too, like if there's anything with painting or building that you can't do, it's like look at the history of what your relatives did. Like my grandfather putting tiny little pieces of gold and jewelry together to make a ring or an earring, little things like that. Where it's like, how much patience do you have to get through it? So it's cool.
No, yeah, I understand though, as far as like, like reserving like what's gonna be your next thing, especially that element of like surprise of busting out, right? It makes things a lot more exciting, bringing things out. How do you feel like the night before a show, when you have your models packed up and that you got to get up early in the morning and we probably got to get breakfast and then we got to hit the show?
So I'm bad. I will like partial pack the night before. But I love that rush in the morning of waking up super early, showering, getting ready. Obviously for a girl, you have to get makeup and like put clothes on to look a little presentable, but kind of going through that process. I actually like the factor of grabbing my models at the very end and my displays at the very end and running out the door and running to go get coffee and going to the show, maybe being a little bit late. It's like there's something about that whole process too that's really exciting. And then it's cool too, because I'm only 4 competition builds in. So
Mhm.
it's like a lot of those guys that are maybe on Facebook, but not on Instagram. And like you'll show up to the show, and as you're walking up, they're already looking like, okay, we saw those last year. What's new? And you'll see
Yeah.
at shows like when you go early too, the moment you take out that new build and put it on the table, you get all these people that are like, oh, like coming up, and they just start to target you with questions. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's cool. So I think like this process of kind of doing stealth builds and pushing the envelope to kind of see like what else you can overcome, it's cool. And yeah, like just in the progress of 4 builds sitting in front of me, like looking at the difference, I can look at my last build and definitely give myself a pat on the back and be like, girl, you overcame a lot, and let's kick ass with the next one.
Yeah, that's dope. And one of the things that it trips me out, and I always, not too long ago, you were posting, the transition, not only 124, but also 1-to-1 scale cars. And you were just posting videos from, just working on a car. And I think it was with that Porsche, that red one with, was it with Daniel, or that it was just like, you see the construction of all this stuff, and I go, damn, dude, like, I mean, I don't work on one-on-one cars or anything, but it's so cool to see. And I'm like, I don't even know where to even start, right?
Imagine how I felt like carpooling to work with Daniel every day, not knowing much about him, because I'm just like bah, 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 just talking every day. And then eventually you find out that the person who you've been carpooling to work with, who's your boss, is also used to be a race car fabricator.
Yeah.
And you can imagine that after he told me that, the conversation, the details, and I'm like, dude, I'm like, just
Like, uh-oh.
like I've never been able to have access to that level of knowledge of someone actually taking you through the steps or being like, hey, and it's kind of bad because I always had a dream of having a Porsche. And then the 944 came up, and I had a conversation with Daniel. I'm like, hey, Daniel has an E30 race car. His buddy, who we hang out with all the time, who let me rip apart my first E30 engine,
Damn.
he also has an E30 race car. So it got to the point that I'm like, shit, to have a Porsche race car would be insane. And
Hmm.
Daniel kind of looked at me and he's like, okay. He's like, what if I help you do it? And I'm like, are you kidding? I'm like, he's like, we'll get the car, we'll go through this. He's like, even if it's a piece of crap that's not running, we'll make it work.
Make it
And
happen.
yeah. And what Daniel has shown me, even through scale modeling and all these things, is like, the only thing that stops you from completing what you need to is the excuse that you tell yourself. So it's like as soon as you're able to put all your bullshit and all your excuses to the side and just go, okay, this is the problem. What are the solutions? It's like I was able to kind of look at Daniel and be like, okay, so this is what I want. He's like, I will commit this time to help you, but you need to show too that you're taking it serious. You're not screwing around, that you're putting in hard work. And I'll never forget those days of building up the 944 where there was something I was trying to overcome, or like cutting carbon fiber for the first time. It's like I'm using equipment that, in wood shop, doing it in wood shop in high school is very different than when you're using fiberglass and working in a shop environment. So
Hmm.
it got to the point that I was trying to figure out Lexan windows on the back of the Porsche, or the side windows of the Porsche. And Daniel's like, look, this is how you do it, but figure it out. And would kind of walk away, and kind of that challenge of taking cardboard and tracing out a rough shape and then going in and doing a fitment test and then remarking it, taking sandpaper and sanding off the edges of the cardboard until you're like, okay, this cardboard fitting test dummy is perfect. Then you go to the Lexan and now you're cutting. So it's like, it's been a whole progress of like, number one, having support, because that's a huge factor of it. And everything else has kind of just fallen into place. Fallen into place. But it's kind of like I started off with the E46 wagon and making modifications on that, and then it went into the 944 Porsche. So eventually, like, that car still has a long way to go, and it's pulled a little bit back from scale modeling. I would definitely be progressing more if it wasn't for working on real cars. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's something I can't give up. Even my mom at one point was like, Kristen, like, she's always been iffy about scale modeling, but when it came to the Porsche, she's like, I don't want my daughter in old cars. She's like, I don't like the idea. At one point, she's like, just sell it, get rid of it. You
Yeah.
already did your modifications in the roll cage. And I'm like, Mom, like, that's like doing a build like this. And then someone comes up and they're like, yeah, just sell it, get rid of it. And you're like,
Oh, done.
Mom. like, it's history.
uh,
So
your wagon, I did see it out at Ventura. I saw it in the parking lot, and I was like, damn, that looks dope. I love is it like camouflage, or what do you call that kind
it's
of pattern?
that's where we kind of got this. It's just like the Volkswagen. It's called Splinter Camo.
Splinter camo. Okay. I
It's
was
used in
like,
military. Yeah, it's used in military, and even for the Volkswagen Bug. That's what led up to the Red Bull livery, was going to Burbank House of Hobbies and seeing the masking tape for the Splinter Camo. And I started looking, and I'm like, damn, that would be such a cool idea. Splinter Camo, Red Bull. I knew I wanted to use blues, but I didn't know exactly how everything was gonna turn
yeah.
out.
I've never been able to find those water slide decals. Those look dope.
Which ones?
The Red Bull, like the Red
Oh,
Bull.
see, because you're a vendor, so you
Mm,
don't get to experience like actual decal hunting. But like
mm,
even at NNL, there was a guy that came up and started talking to me about my build, and I'm like, oh, I'm like, I do custom liveries. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, yeah, I'm like, my Ford GT and my Volkswagen Bug both have custom liveries. And he was like, hush, hush. At the very end of the show, I had two gentlemen come up to me and they're like, hey, we need you. Just come here a moment. And I walked over. They took me to a vendor booth, and he starts pulling like 5 or 6 bins from under the table. And he's like,
oh dang.
these decals will never be seen again. He's like, the guy that printed them has passed away. And he's like, make your pick and I'll charge you for them. But he's like, no one in the show saw these. And I'm like, why did you bring him?
Uh,
I'm like, and why are you telling me now? I'm like, I feel like this is a trap to make me spend.
yeah.
But yeah, like if you need even that gentleman's contact, if I'm not mistaken, I think I either have his cell phone number or we're friends through Instagram. But I can send you his contact, and like if you have
Yeah.
his, yeah, but that's a secret.
All right on. Let me mute. Let me
If you
mute.
have like
Nah, it's
if
cool.
you
Yeah,
have like a
because like
specific,
when I see certain cars with like liveries, I'm always like thinking, all right, that might be the one that came with the kit. But then sometimes I'm like, I want to get something different, even if it doesn't make sense with whatever build I'm doing. I kind of want to grab and put something on the car. And I started to think to myself, you know what? I need to start kind of like how you are, like searching for decals. And but like you say, it's tough sometimes. Sometimes I don't have time to check out everybody's booth just to see like what they got in the catalog. But it must be exciting though. Like looking through that right there, that's crazy that he brought it up,
I'm
but he wasn't showing it.
yeah, and like imagine how I feel when I look at something Daniel does, and like even the opal. There was certain parts, because I remember the opal, when Daniel built the opal, it was before I started scale modeling or anything. And I remember him saying, I'm building, I'm building, I'm building. And he would start to send photos, and I would see like some type of like, I don't know, let's call it a fuel pump. And on that, there would be like all these different decals. And I would start asking him, like, how did you get this? How did you do this? And he'd be like, oh, I took 3 decals, and it's a tiny little square. He's like, I took 3 decals. I laid one that's white. I put something that's yellow and a barcode next to it. And I'm like, but that's like a millimeter on your model. And he's like, yeah, but look at from this distance and how it looks. And I'm like, damn. So what I started doing is, even when I started building, there were times that I'm doing something, obviously count the GT one out, because that's almost out of the box. And I added wires and, metal or foil. But like by the time we got to the Sauber, it's like it's completely different. Like what I've learned from Daniel is that the more that you can layer those details, And then if you happen to be like, hey, check this out, look at this angle of the engine, and they can see a decal sitting on the block. Those little things, it's so storytelling for that difference when you're comparing something that's like hyper detailed to something that is just painted, you know? So I've definitely picked that up from Daniel, which is a lucky tip or trick to know. And then what we've done is, because I've gone crazy on buying decals, and because when I've wanted to scratch build, Daniel would be like, hey, here's my like a spare decals or whatever. When I'm going to shows and buying decals now, I'm just collecting them to the point I haven't found my new stack since I moved, but I literally have a stack of probably like 25 plus racing decals.
Dang,
That
do you keep them like in a binder or like in a little box, or how do you store them?
boxes
Yeah.
boxes because like that's the fun part of the build too. It's like it's not keeping it organized, and then that moment that you know that you want to do crazy detailing and you have a box and you get to go through that process of scrambling through and you're like, oh my god, I forgot I had this, and you start putting like tiny little important details or decals that you're going to use on that build. It starts to just compile and build beautifully. So it's worth it. But yeah, I'm notorious for removing parts from boxes and decals. You know, like I'll find one or two decals that I want from a site and I just cut it out and worry about it, you know, down the line.
Yeah,
But
no, that's dope.
I can see eventually how I'm gonna have to end up contacting people that print custom decals and be like, hey, I need a whole set of Bilstein or like
Yeah.
something to kind of help out. So
Yeah, I would love to like uh have or know someone that knows how to digitally create liveries and be able to format me like a decal sheet so this way I could send that out to get printed, you know?
what I've been doing is like there's times you can find logos and then you can literally take whatever kit you want to build it for and take different measurements. And you give, hey, you literally contact someone that does it. I know the decal lady is one, and then there's SD something. I'm like blanking SD,
I know there's a
SDS.
company SK Decals. Is it that
Okay.
one?
No, this one's I think SDS on Facebook.
Oh, okay, okay.
And I've used him one time where I had the last commission build I did was the Porsche GT1 for a gentleman that he has a Porsche like custom repair shop. So he, or not custom, but a Porsche repair shop, and he wanted a Porsche built with custom number 18. So I went and had that done. And I realized like while I was at it, I'm like, let me just pay a little bit extra and get some Lionheart motoring ones printed. And I realized that the way I measured it, 1 inch, it was so small compared to like having one that's 3 inches where it can be, you know, spaced out on the side of a car. So I don't know if I'll end up using them, but it's cool to go through the process of having decals customized. One of the problems is that it ends up being one sheet though. So you really have to get fine scissors and kind of get that as little of that like excess white decal that's left
Yeah.
over out, you know?
No, definitely. Yeah, because that's the thing I would want. Like I had reached out to a company and they said that they can do a sheet for me, die cut and everything. But
That's
obviously I'd have to probably get like a minimum 1,000 and more. But it's one of those things that I'm like thinking like, all right, it could be a livery or it could be maybe a sheet that just has a bunch of a mix of stuff in there
yeah.
just for the purpose of it being made out and having it out there and then all the items be die cut. So this way, like you say, when you put it on, you don't have all that excess that you need to like trim off.
Worry about as it goes yellow over time. It's like you see that
Yeah.
little border. Dang it.
I
Stop.
know. It's like, oh, what the heck? And from skill model building, from been doing it all this time, what's like the least favorite thing that you like about it? What's the one thing that you dread that you go, oh man, here we go. I gotta do this.
Nothing. Yeah, I don't know, because it's like I mean, yeah, like there's a lot of times that I'm opening holes and I realize that it's not aligned perfectly and that bugs the crap out of me. But there's nothing that really bugs me. I think that there's a lot of challenges, like when you're scratch building and modifying things. I remember for the bug, Daniel's done a lot of scratch building where he's kind of, and through his videos too that are posted for Scale Freaks YouTube, he has one of the BMW builds on there that he customized, and he shows how to do those fenders. So I'm like, okay, let's make this thing wide body. And I think at the point that I was putting milliputty, and don't make fun of me, but beginner's mistake, I was putting milliputty and I would end up shaving it all down. And then again, I would put milliput and end up shaving it all down. At one point, Daniel was like, are you building your, because he's like, at this point, he's like, you should have a thick layer. And I'm like, no, my wide body's still really thin. And he's like, show me what you're doing. And I took the phone. I'm like, blah, 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 blah. Cause he's at his house. I'm at my house. And he's like, Kristen, he's like, are you putting milliputty and then sanding it all down and then reapplying it? And I'm like, isn't that what you're supposed to do? He's like, no, he's like, you're supposed to build on the layers, but allow your mistakes to stay and just continue to improve. And I'm like, oh, I'm like, I wasted at least like a day. I'd say like a
Uh,
day and a half of sanding that I was
dang.
like, oh. My house covered in like fine little particles everywhere. And I'm just like,
uh,
whatever, it's okay. We're learning.
yeah,
So a
it
lot of
happens.
time gets wasted, but
Hmm. Yeah, I
yeah.
always like to hear everybody's like
But
least things, but that's cool.
I would say that custom work, when you need to get body lines to look perfect, it's a challenge. And then obviously putting all this gray primer and having to go through that process of constantly painting and cleaning your airbrush, it's like, it's a drag. But eventually, when you get to the final look and you see the before and after, you're like, I don't care how long it takes, it's so worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, earlier today, I had some time to myself before I picked up my daughter from daycare, and I was like moving stuff around in the garage, and I had to set up my airbrush booth because I haven't airbrushed in a while. It's been a minute, and I have like projects that are just stalled, like they're just chilling, and they need to be painted, they need to be clear coated, just to kind of get it over to the next, stage. And I was like, all right, let me start setting this up, so I started making room and everything. And for me, like one of the things that I don't know, sometimes gets in the way is like I like to just be by myself, or like just doing my own thing when I'm airbrushing, you know and but sometimes I'm in a situation, like for example, like in the garage, right? If I'm going to be airbrushing in there, there's always going to be someone walking by or driving by, right?
Yeah,
and
that's true.
and if
The
I'm if I'm concentrated and I'm doing something and someone walks by, they're always like, "Hey, what's up, Edgar? What's up?" They want to chat, and I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, "Dude, I'm like, I don't even want to stop what I'm doing. But I don't want to be rude either. So I have to stop, and I'm like, oh man, like, it's almost like this like awkwardness, and then sometimes too, because of the smell of the paint, I get a little paranoid, thinking like, oh damn, they're gonna trip off the paint, like they're gonna tell me something like, hey, to stop, but no one says nothing, but it's all in my
yeah,
head, you know.
and that's completely normal. It's like a human trait, and it's good to be conscious of what others are thinking. But I agree. Like even the place I just moved to, I don't know. I could have an issue when it comes to painting because they don't even want like aerosols in the home. But I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
this is gonna be interesting. So
yeah,
and I'm so used to painting, having like the little DIY paint booths set up by a window and doing my
yeah.
little setup. So there's going to be new challenges, but at the same time, it's like, I think the fun part is overcoming it. But I'm curious too, when was the last time that you completed a build?
Yeah, well, it was the blue GTR. I
Okay.
had it there at the show at N&L, but I had it on my
On your
table.
table.
Yeah, by the
Okay.
splash. So you see, that was one that it was pretty much done. It was just I was just lagging it on certain things. And sometimes I like to say it's almost like when you're reading a book that's so good and you don't want to finish it. and you're like on the last chapters and you have that bookmark in there oh damn, look at that.
Still
And you're
sitting
just,
on it.
and you're just like, all right, I know I could finish it, but I kind of don't because I'm admiring it. It's cool, it's right there. But since the NNL was coming up, I was like, all right, I gotta finish this. Like, come on. I'm just like, what am I gonna show, at these shows? Like, I don't want to just say, oh no, I didn't, it's back at home. I didn't bring anything. So
Why didn't you put it in the show?
I don't know. I think because I was, well, not that I don't know. It was more because I had the splash paints on
Okay.
display. And I used splash paint and the clear. I kind of wanted to showcase that there at the event. And I don't know, it was just like I got there early. I had time, to be able to go over there and get the paperwork and like set up. But since I was already like setting up the table and everything and there was space, I was like, all right, why not just put these builds right here, you know?
Yeah.
And for like this upcoming show, the SoCal Open, I'm debating. I'm like, all right, should I put the car on the table or should I just keep it here? Because when I went over to Spain, the homies from 124 Eternals, David, he built for me this like a scale writer's like HQ little building that's a 124 scale
That's
with the
cool.
little curve and a street that you know I'm thinking, dude, I don't know, should I put it on the table? I want to bring the little building and just have people be able to put their car and take a photo in front of
That would
the
be
building.
that would be really cool to I would definitely do that. I
Yeah,
would
I want to
definitely.
bring it because it's later. I'll put a little light in there and I'll fix it up in there because you could see through the windows. But since it's dark and I don't have a light, it almost looks like you can't see through it, but you could. And I don't know. I would like to see people's cars in front of that building, like photographs. Like,
If you do almost like a mini little photo booth setup where like imagine you have that little setup and then you have like two little lights on both
mhm.
sides. So when you set your car in, it's like lighting. I'm telling you, people would probably I would go nuts for it. I'm not going to talk about other people. I know
Yeah,
but I
I
would
want
be like,
to.
oh shit, I like that idea.
Yeah, I feel like, if David's watching later, I'm gonna be like, yo, I need to commission you to make two more on the side. So this way now we have everything like spread out right there for the street. But
That's not a bad idea at all. Hey, add a Lionheart motoring Porsche BMW little
dude,
modifying shop. No,
right? A little shop next to it, little garage kind
a
of thing.
little garage with little roll up. I'll be so happy. Like,
Yeah, it's crazy like seeing the work when I saw it. I mean, I was shocked, I was surprised, but just seeing how everything was well crafted, made out of wood and all the pieces together. And he was also showing me when I was there at his home, his grandfather used to do like buildings, like little small replicas of stuff. And he was showing he still has all these pieces at the house. And he was just like telling me, hey, check it out. Like, this is some of my grandfather's work, And then I was like, yo, I could see now, like the connection from your grandfather to what you're doing. But now you're taking it to this next level because now you have the information, you have the tools, you have everything in front of you, right?
and a different passion too. Like back in the
Yeah.
day, my family, I know my grandfather's father was also a jeweler. So I think that came back to survival and taking care of the family. And now it's kind of taking those traditions and seeing like the amount of work and things that they've done. Cause like even on my 944, there's a lion emblem that my grandfather made, which is so cute. And I ended up taking that little gold emblem and putting it onto my steering wheel too. So
Man, that's dope. So
yeah,
is
like
that where it comes from, the Lionheart motoring?
yeah. And
Nice.
that's crazy because like people don't know unless someone asks me and I'm like, oh,
Mhm.
like, no, this is the customized little work to it. But yeah, like adding that because my grandfather passed away, it's been about 6 years now. And I
Mhm.
lived with him prior. So it's like
Mhm.
we were super, super close. And I remember at one point I was going through his back office and I came across this little medallion that had a lion. And I'm like, I have to take this. I have
Yeah.
to find a way to take something like that and what I'm building for myself. And obviously my last name means lion. So it's like taking that message and like all the symbolism and kind of incorporating that. And then obviously having something that was commissioned, like hand built by my grandfather, that gets to stay with me, to stay with my race car. And eventually it's like going down the track, having that little connection of like family history and like all the
Yeah.
stuff that people had to overcome to get to where they were at. It's like, I can say with confidence, my grandfather was a very, very humble person and did a lot to give back to others.
That's dope.
So kind of like incorporating that into daily life, it makes a big difference. And not being selfish, not caring about, sometimes what are like human necessities versus kind of just enjoying life and making people feel good. And, it's kind of,
Hmm.
it's different because like even for him, obviously he became a jeweler, and like it's crazy because like even for my grandfather, he was the jeweler. So little history, but like both my parents were born in Ethiopia, but I'm Armenian. So my grandfather, because of I don't know if you know about the whole Armenian genocide that happened in 1915, but my family fled to Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, because Christianity was what they had in common. And my grandfather worked as a jeweler at that time, and he ended up becoming the personal jeweler for Haile Selassie, who was the king of Ethiopia that was massacred. So it's kind of crazy when you go into history and kind of understanding that even though back in the day, like I had my family did come from wealth, my grandfather also stepped away and left his business, his business and his gold back in Ethiopia after the king was massacred and his family fled. And what he did is he sent his family literally to LA, to Winnetka, and he stayed in Ethiopia for roughly another like 2 to 3 weeks just to train his employees on how to run the business, what to do with the gold, how to be successful. And then he left and fled too. So it's kind of crazy. And it's like you see a lot of knowing how my grandfather was. He was a person that did a lot for other people and never expected anything, never asked. And he was very respectful and humble and different from the way that you see like people that are living American culture today. So that alone, it's like that humbleness and the way that he spent so much time. Like I remember one day my mom came up and even mentioned, she's like, you're spending so much time building these little things in your house, like get out of the house, go do something. And I had to remind her, I said, just keep in mind, it was also your father that would spend months and weeks building a tiny little piece of jewelry for a wedding ring or an earring or something. And I said, just remember that he spent hours and hours. And imagine someone coming in and saying, hey, that is just a waste of time. So it's kind of going back to that focus and just like patience in life, which is something that I feel like we get very distracted and lost from. So,
No,
I
yeah. Damn,
not
that's
having
cool.
kids, yeah, like not having kids is definitely an advantage for me right now, because obviously if you had a family, you don't get the time to spend in a hobby like this. So
Hmm.
it's kind of embracing like where I'm at, and also like respecting, like I love hearing stories when there are people that honor their family members. And like you just said, like even you going to Spain, and I saw pictures and I'm like, you can tell that's an amazing group of people.
Yeah.
I think I told you that right before we started this little interview, that I was like, I saw that photo and I'm like, I wanted to be there. I'm like, I would have had the best time being there and talking about the cars and looking at these builds and realizing like, okay, we have a lot
Yeah.
in common. And it's crazy too, because like the more that I saw that the way that everything was structured and sculpted and the way that you guys were all standing around, it reminded me, I had a teacher in elementary school, Mr. Talley, and he was like a surfer, but he had geckos and what, like he had al like albino snakes and just crazy stuff. But he did this whole thing where we basically built like a community of boxes, and we made buildings and sculptures and roads. And we took his gecko and we did an entire skit where, imagine, like we're in like fourth grade we did a whole skit with Legos. And as the Legos are moving across, it's our voices panning over. And then you see at one point there's smoke going through and the gecko's walking through, like as if it's Godzilla walking through the buildings. And like, you know, seeing that setup reminded me of like being a kid in Mr. Talley's class where we were, you know, just being creative and having fun. And it's a bunch of kids or a bunch of people standing around some artistic sculpture and, you know, putting objects in front and filming or just having fun. It's cool. Like imagine, like even if you were to do some type of skit with that setup, with all the buildings and parked in front of 7-Eleven, as the cars are moving, you do voiceovers. It could be so funny, like to the point that people would sit
Oh, you're
there
right.
just watching. Yeah,
Yeah.
like move, you know, like move your butt over, and it just like moves into one spot over, like just stupid stuff where
Hmm.
people can continue to like build on displaying their art, but also make it more appealing to like maybe kids that want to
Yeah.
build, are interested but can't, or
Yeah.
like I don't know. But it's really cool to see the different, you know, different areas and what people are up to, because you know.
Yeah, it is. It was like, this trip of going out there to visit Spain. I had never traveled out there to Spain. I've been to other parts of Europe, but never Spain. And I always wanted to go there in the past. And prior to traveling out there, I always traveled because of music. Music took me to these other places. But in this situation, it was more like an invitation through modeling, scale modeling, that took me to that destination where it made this connection, from years of talking with David through Instagram, connecting with the members of their club and everything, to seeing their pieces, online all the time, but then finally to see it in person was just crazy. That I was like, dude, I'm like miles and miles away from home, but I'm finally here. And to the point where I brought a model car with me, and then being like, you know what, that model's staying here. I'm not even bringing it home.
Oh,
Like this car, it's a part of this, right here. And just being there, and when everyone showed up and I met everybody, you know, um, I could speak English and Spanish to them, so it was cool. Communication was there. But even if, let's just say, if I couldn't speak, the language, or I know either way, we were going to communicate one way or another through our builds, right? And
yeah.
it was just kind of cool to see them conversing and seeing each other. And for a moment, I had to just kind of step aside and kind of just observe, that energy that was there present. And I started to just record, them talking, them being excited to pull out cars, because there was some cars that were just done for this meet, that they were kind of just showing each other for the first time. And since they don't really have like model car shows, or all the modelers are spread out in different parts of the country, and there's different genres but this here, these guys collectively come together, and it's a small group of guys, only 6 members. Unfortunately, I didn't get to meet one of the members, but I got to meet, 5 of the guys in person. And I mean, they made me feel like I was at home. It was such a great experience. And I already know, like, if you and Daniel were there, you guys would just love it. You guys would trip out, and then they would love your guys' builds too, just seeing everything on there. And trust me, you would be taking a lot of photos of your builds in the dioramas, but the day would is gonna go by like that, like
Believe
fast.
me. I saw a few out, like saw like I think it was an Audi that I was like, oh, I would have loved to park my build right next to it with 7-Eleven in the background. I'm like, come on. It was
Yeah.
too cool. And that's kind of the cool part. It's like through scale modeling, just so you mentioning that, it was I don't know if you know this builder named Jan. I can't even pronounce. I'll send you his I'll send you his Instagram because it's something so inappropriate. I can't say
Yeah.
it. But yeah, it's funny though. But he lives in Puerto Rico and he's awesome. We met when I first started building, and like we started conversing, he started popping into my lives, and like it was very similar. At one point, he was in a live with Daniel and I where he was explaining that he doesn't have access to the types of materials we have out here in California, because in Puerto Rico, they don't have a hobby store out there. So it's kind of interesting too to see that difference in what people have to overcome. But you can definitely tell that in that photos, or the photos that you took from Spain, you can definitely tell that that's a good group of like people that are just in this hobby because they love it. Like, it's so weird to say that, but it's like you can almost tell the difference when someone's in the hobby to be like, hey, look at me and this is what I do, versus someone is in the hobby to like inspire others and be like, hey, encourage and just have fun with it. So yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. If I was there, if I was invited, like I would have probably gone.
Yeah,
But
no,
yeah, it's
yeah,
cool.
it was like cool because it inspired me because like I was like already thinking like where do I want to go next? I want to go somewhere else. I definitely want to go back to Japan, but then there's other places like I'm thinking like, all right, my friend KC, he's in Australia. Why don't I just go to Australia? Why don't I go to New Zealand and see like Kiwi Cam out there? There's all these places, like no matter where you go, you're gonna find a connection. Like there's gonna be a group of people like-minded that are model builders that are gonna be like, come through, let's link up, bring your builds, please.
And those are the best meets. Like I know Willie from Dedicated is someone that's been a huge advocate of and like supporter of me
Oh,
building and
no, hell yeah.
pushing the envelope. Like Willie all the time, he'll be like, hey, he'll reach out to me, Daniel, and like other fellow builders, and he'll be like, hey, like random meetup, it's last minute, but this is what's
Let's
going
come
on.
through.
Yeah, if you guys can make it come through, like maybe bring something, or don't, like there's times that he'll treat us, and it's like that moment of going in, and like you said, the hospitality and coming into someone else's home, and it's like feeling welcomed, all these little things, and like you get to, it makes me like almost emotional, but it's like you get to see into someone's life that already you're going to shows and you're bonding with these people and just having
Yeah.
conversations. And then like even Pablo and Leo, they were another one
Yeah.
that Daniel had to go pick something up. He called me. He's like, hey, I'm going to Pablo's and Leo's. Do you want to come? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I really dropped whatever I was doing. And I'm like,
Definitely.
yeah, I'm like,
Yeah.
Daniel, I'm on my way to your house. I'm like, let's go. And that moment of like coming in, and it's like the hospitality. That's like the moment. Like even for Pablo, his wife turned around right before we left, and she's like, let's take a photo.
Oh,
She's
that's
like,
dope.
the famous photo for everyone that visits, and it's like making those little things, those little memories. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah, that's tight. I always like when Pablo shows, like I like the most recent photo he posted of Leo, like across from him, where he's like, you could tell Leo's in the zone, like working on his model. And I
Yeah.
was just like, damn, that's such a dope photo right there,
Yeah. And
Um,
it's like how cool is it too to have families that build together? And it's like
oh yeah.
in the case that you don't have other family members that are building, it's like you start to bond with other people, and it's like the connections you make. Like there's been nights I'll have another scale modeler call me, and they're like, hey, I'm working on this build. Can I ask you about this? And I'm also like, why are they asking me? I'm still new to building, but I'm like, okay, sure. And we start getting into conversations and this and that. And it's like, it's amazing to also have, it's weird to say it, but like sometimes if you don't really have the best family environment, it's amazing that you can go out and meet amazing, like good heart people that have similar interests, or at least that when you're around them, you don't have to be worried about something bad happening, or just having people that kind of look out for you and that make you feel good, and that you can go to these shows and you want to be there because you're going to be laughing your ass off and spending more money than you should. It's like it's weird. It's like every time I go to a show and I see you with your booth, I almost ignore you because I'm like, damn it. Like, I'm like, I know I'm going to go up. I know I'm going to want to buy and spend. And literally I go to your table. If you notice, I barely even look at you. I'm just like, oh, I need this. I want that. And I'm like, stop, like, take
Dang.
it easy.
No, yeah, I remember. Yeah, the last show I saw you at the Ventura one.
I think I walked
Resisting.
away with one thing, and I don't even know where that is because I moved. So
Yeah, that's funny. How was that transition of moving, especially with the models and all this stuff? Like, was it nerve-wracking?
so it's kind of crazy. The first thing I did was pack up my trophies and my models. I put like a safe box in the corner and I'm like, no one touches this whatsoever. And then, I mean, I don't know if you can see, I think you can, but behind me, I've always had this little glass cabinet, which was actually, it was Daniel's glass cabinet that was at Peterson Museum. So I don't know if you know that, but Daniel used to build and display and sell kits at Peterson.
Nah, I never knew that. Damn.
So yeah, so like one day again, Daniel randomly called. He's like, "Hey, I'm going." Before I was like completely, I think I maybe did my first model back then. And Daniel called me. He's like, "I'm going to Peterson. I have to go pick something up." He didn't say that he displays models there. So we went and I helped him pick up this little showcase. And once we got it into the car, he was like, "Congratulations! Like you just got your first showcase." I'm like, "What?" So that's how I got this one. And at that time, I mean, just having my models, like the 4 models and the start of the trophies, it was starting to fill out. Now it's like I have this one that's devoted just to trophies, and then the 2 side ones are building up, but they're Porsche design sunglass cabinets that I came across when I moved here. And yeah, that's another whole story. But you know, I'm a crazy about Porsche stuff, and even finding sunglass cabinets that were like waiting for me to just pick up. I was like, this is not good. But yeah, so it's a nice little thing because it kind of fits the models pretty well.
Dude,
One day,
those are perfect.
oh,
When I saw your video on them, I was like, "What? Those are so dope!" And don't they light up too?
yeah, they do. It
Yeah,
turns out really bad on here, but
that's
there's a
crazy.
switch under. Thank
Yeah,
you.
they're so dope.
I like
Let's
them.
see. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, so like, sorry, I have to go under the table. But when building, I'm like, it adds this cool little factor behind you that kind of keeps you motivated. But yeah, I basically came across that. The guy had, I think, 4 Porsche design cases and only 2 would fit the models. So I did like rough estimates and I'm like, done.
Yeah, no, yeah,
It
you're like
looks a lot.
these are coming home for sure. Those are dope.
I'm like, these are, yeah. I'm like,
It was meant to be. And then I like the display because you got both on the sides and then you got the one that you got from Daniel in the center with
and
the
then
awards.
I have, yeah, and then floating around, I have 2. I know one's up there, but I have 2 different times that I've been featured in magazines too. So I've gone ahead and Daniel got me started on that too. He's like, "Do you get featured in a magazine?" He's like, "Why don't you take a copy, keep one for you, buy another copy, cut it up, and put it on your wall as art?" And I'm like, "Oh, how cool!" Because I'm kind of
Yeah.
notorious. Like even when I was doing photography and journalism, I have a lot of awards. I never display them. So this is actually the first time I've ever gotten an award that I've displayed is through scale modeling. So it's kind of crazy because like even through journalism, I have to show it to you one day. I have an award-winning picture where a guy was on drugs and like kicked out the back windshield of the back window of a sheriff's vehicle on a college campus. It's insane. But even that one photo, I got so many awards for. And one thing I failed to do is like have that pride in myself. So I think this like what sits behind me and like what's the fact that people
Yeah, that's motivation right there.
yeah, but
That's
like
dope.
so many people that have like voted for me and like
Hmm.
supported me in this hobby and they're like,
Yeah.
you know, and it's funny too because it's like it's almost like as soon as I make the next build, whatever was previous is like obsolete. It's
Hmm.
like it gets forgotten and people are like,
Oh,
oh, forget that. Because like think about it, the Sauber was like hard hitting. The Ford GT was whatever. I pushed it out to get that done, but it was the first time I customized my own livery. And then once I hit with the bug, it's the same thing. Like the Sauber is obsolete. People don't even look at it. Now they're looking at the bug and they're like, holy cow.
dang, those cars are getting
So
sad. Nah.
it's it's funny to me how he's like you can bring a car to a show and like people vote for it and they're like, it's
Mhm.
amazing. And then you bring something that's better than that. And then suddenly they're like, no, screw this build. Like, this is the one,
Yeah,
you
this is the
know?
new one now.
It's
Yeah,
funny. So at least I know that there's progress and there's still there's still a lot more for me to learn and get comfortable with, especially with painting. You know, it's like
yeah,
what you see lowrider, like the people, and it's kind of tough too, because it's like even when I go to lowrider shows, it happens so often too that I'll find a car that I'm obsessed with, and I'll be like, hey, I want to meet the person that did this. And like it happened to me at a low riding show. I forgot the name of this one that I went to, but there was like an insane paint job. And as soon as I came up and I was like, oh, I want to see, I have questions. You know, I'm like, who built this? And then they brought up the builder. And then I asked, oh, I'm like, who did this technique of paint? And they're like, oh, some other person, this and that. And I was like, damn it. I was like, it's like
oh,
there's even with that, there's a lot of painters that are
mhm.
doing some crazy techniques
Yeah,
for the low riding community that like I really want to better understand, because I think in the future it's like there's going to be a lot of different techniques that are going to start to come out that are going to be hopefully game changing, and we'll see.
yeah,
But you know, it's like that's why even with Willie, it's like I'll go over and I'll start examining his builds. You know, like if you've ever been to his place, he has a
mhm.
little like
Yeah, yeah.
display case.
His
So
area. Uh-huh.
all the time, like I come in, I'm just like boop boop boop, like running
Check
through
that
his
out.
garage to go to that little corner, and I'm like, hey, how
Yeah,
did you do this? How did you do that? So they'll get there, but I'm like, it's insane. Like another one, like you did the recent interview with David.
mhm.
David, is it David Anthony Garcia?
Yes, and with
Yeah,
Armando and Gary
I know
C.
that. Yeah, I know that there's two David Garcias or something. It gets confusing,
Yeah, yeah, they got
but
two of
something
them
like that. But
down the
David,
scale crew.
I swear to God, because like Willie will be like, oh, he starts to drop the initials, and I'm like, wait, is that this one or that one? Like, but like even with him, like there's models that are sitting at Willie's that I'm like, how the hell did you do that? And he's like, oh, that's David's pinstriping. I'm like, how do you get to a point that you're pinstriping on a model that tiny, that fine, and it's like perfect? So it's like there's a lot of things I think over time I would love to be able to experiment with more, but I think nailing that fine detail with other genres is going to be interesting. It's the same thing like if I jump into Gundam right now, I would get killed, but there may be certain things with, you know, building cars that you can bring into Gundam that people haven't thought of. And that's why when Dutch built his first Gundam, I was like, boy, I see what you're doing. The Gundam, the lowrider, it's like, I love seeing that where a builder can step out of their genre to also try to tackle something new. Or like another one too is Rachel Riggs. I met her at Brookhurst. I don't know, maybe 2 years ago. But yeah, she was someone that was building Gundam, and we met and started talking. And like, little did I know that she, like, growing up, was working on cars. And we became friends on Instagram. She starts seeing me working on cars. She starts talking to me more, and now she's building her first car.
Oh,
I
it's
don't know if
dope.
she's gonna, yeah, I don't know if she's gonna compete with it, but she's doing it as like a honorary to her husband.
Mhm.
So it's kind of cool that, you know, these different dynamics and different ways that you can build things to kind of honor someone or to like display different artistic techniques.
Yeah.
It's insane. Like it still shows that there's so much that's undiscovered in this art realm as well, you know?
No, it is. It is. Yeah, you'll get a little bit of everything like when you start dabbling into different genres and you start stepping out of what you normally do and getting into something else. You start noticing because even like for myself, like in the beginning, I mainly built a lot of lowrider cars. That was always like my thing. And then when I started getting into custom painting, like Armando started showing me about custom painting, combination of colors, which later led to like me being like, all right, let me take a paint class, a lawyer paint class. And then from there, I started paying more attention to like now the custom car, that custom culture, and seeing the types of work they were doing. And now, I'm paying a lot of attention to like a lot of the import JDM cars where the
Yeah.
focus isn't too much on the paint jobs. It's primarily more focused, obviously like on engines, the stance, the wheels, and certain combinations. And I'm like, all right, cool. Like, there's certain things that like the focuses is always it keeps shifting all the time. And I know at some point, next thing you know, I'm gonna be transitioning into like what you're doing, right?
Race cars.
I'm gonna get into the race cars too, because I'm gonna start to pay attention to the detail of engine, and all these things that I'm like, wait a minute, like I wasn't paying attention to that with these other genres and stuff, but now at some point, I know it's gonna come full circle. I mean, you don't stop learning, but you do pick up on those things to help you elevate that build, to the next pretty much. And you know how it is, like once you pull out like your cars, it's definitely inspiring to others. People see that and they're like, wow, like I want to do something like that, and that's when all these questions come about, how'd you do it and everything. A lot of times when we have these questions, we're feeling that inspiration already right there. It's just we don't know how to express it. So that's us asking that question, by inside we're excited, but we want to know the unknown, because once we know, we want to go try it.
It's true. One of the coolest things I've come to find out is when you start a group chat with several builders just throwing ideas out, it gets crazy because it's like certain people pay attention to other details, and like when you're actually just throwing out pictures just from Google and just having fun with that, you get hella like, I don't know if that's a like hella inspired. I don't know if that's like so Cali. I don't know,
Yeah,
but
no, that's not like NorCal. Everyone up north says hella, but no, I know
yeah,
what you mean.
when you do, it's like there's been times that we get ideas, or like we'll have little meetups where we bring what we're working on, and someone will just start talking crap or ripping apart what you're doing. We'll throw an idea out. They're like, hey, have you thought about that? You're like, shit, I didn't. And you're like, you
Mhm.
go home, you're looking at your model, you're like, all right, let's do this. Like,
Dang, yeah.
what's
I,
next?
I, I wanted to ask you a question. This is coming from Casey. He's all the way in Australia. That's tuned in. Shout out to Casey. He wants to know, is there a kit, like a model kit that you want to build that you haven't gotten to yet?
Hold on, let me turn off this light so you
Yeah,
can see.
yeah. Cool. Maybe something from the stash, I bet.
I know, but I have too many that are back here. That's the problem. So let me see. Do I want to? I don't know. There's too many. I think this is like probably my biggest prized one right now. I don't know. Because then I have an Alpha, Mercedes, Audi, and Porsche galore, but I would say probably this guy. The 917K Martini livery is something that it's been sitting here for a while, and it just what's the problem with me? There's kits that I buy that I'm like, there's ones that I'm like, I want to use for competition, and then there's other kits I buy that I'm like, I just want to build it. And then every single build of mine turns into one of those, oh, but what if I just step it up and turn it into a competition build? So it's never ending. But I think this is a kit that I bought, the Martini livery, that I'm like, I want to build it for my collection. I just don't know if I'll compete with it, but at the same time, I don't know. I think
Mhm.
I'm becoming obsessed with kits that display an engine, because I feel like if you're gonna spend the money, you know, you might as well have that as an option. But I would say it's the little treasure, and I don't know. I have so many kits.
I noticed in the background of
It's
Porsche,
not good.
that the Nunu plots in that corner.
This one,
Yeah,
the
that one.
is it by new? I don't even. Yeah, this is by new. So
Yeah, it's
this is a new
crazy.
one.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
a new one,
It's a trip because
and I got
Damn, where'd you get that one? Because
The guys at Brookhurst. It's so weird too. Like
oh,
the weirdest
that
thing
one's hard
happened.
to get. That one's hard to find. I'll tell you that right now.
Reach out to me. I got you.
That's that one.
You
That
gotta,
one's pretty cool. I like the
yeah.
artwork on it. It's like in the air. It's like
Oh,
it's flying.
it's tell you this with that one. You're gonna make me go back under. So I have here. Let me show you.
All
I
right.
have a GT2.
All right. I'm gonna give out some shout outs here. We got D Block, Scale Model Cars all the way in Hawaii. What's up? Chip TV. Uh, Joe Porsche is on here. Let's
Hey,
see. Cube Jam.
Vegas. Hello, hello.
Let's see.
So I did something insane. So this is probably the ultimate build that I want to do, but it's combination of Rally, my baby, my 944, but this one's a turbo, but also Rothmans. And then I want to take this kit, the 911 GT2, and same thing. I want to do Rothman. So I'm going to completely scrap that livery altogether. But I think those combinations, because I have a problem. I went and I found Rothman 124th scale decals. So now I'm like, oh, cool. Every Porsche I buy can become a Rothman's like this. But I think having like the Rally, the 944, and the GT2 all by like side by side is going to be really cool. So
that would be dope. Dang.
There's definitely a lot of Porsche builds, a few Audi builds, and you know, but I think like that right there, I mean, obviously it's all Porsche, which is such a problem. But
if you could pick your, let's say if you had to pick from 1 to 3, what's the lineup? I know you like Porsche. I know you like Audi, BMW, but which one's number 1?
Number 1 for sure, Porsche. I have a problem.
Number 2?
I don't know. This gets tricky because I would say BMW, but do you know how many problems those cars have? If it's not new, it's like you're screwed. But yeah, like Audi's definitely up there. But I would say, oh, I hate saying this. I think it's Porsche, Audi, then Beamers. So
All right,
bad.
the top 3.
And like, yeah, like that's not my favorite cars. That's just my favorite car brands. You know? And I'm sure that there's other brands that you put in front of me. I'm like, okay, that would change. But in regard to like German cars, I mean, I've driven so sad. You know, I talk to people that are my age and they'll be like, oh, I've already gone through like 8 cars. So I only went through what, 3 cars? Ah!
3?
No, you're good. Sorry, my computer needs to upgrade. I don't know if you heard that.
Yeah, no.
Sorry.
I think I heard something, but I don't know what that was. It's all good.
But yeah, so what was I saying? Sorry, that distracted me.
So you had mentioned that you know people who've gone through like 8 cars, and then you were about to say about you.
Yeah, so I know people that have gone through like 8 cars in a lifetime, and I went from Toyota was my first Honda. That ended up getting totaled when it was parked in LA, East LA. I went to a party and I woke up to my car destroyed the next day. So basically someone, LAPD shot a guy that went limp and went full speed into my parked car. So that got destroyed. And then I was like, hey, what am I going to go do? Buy another Honda. So I went and did that. And that Honda has been great and reliable. But then I eventually was like, it's Daniel's fault again, because he already had a wagon, a little E46 wagon. And one day he's like, hey, just take it home, but drive it like it's yours. So I did that and I fell in love with that. And I was like, that's it. I need a wagon in my life.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that wagon's dope.
Yeah, so it led to the wagon, which led to the Porsche. And it's like, you know, you think that your car is cool until you drive and then you realize kind of like how crappy your Honda kind of is, which is, you know, to each their own. But I didn't realize how crappy like the brakes and like actually the way you feel in the car, the difference. Because it's like I've only been in Toyota and Honda. So it's good and it's opened me up to new brands, but those are the only brands I've really owned, minus Audi.
Yeah.
Audi is just because if you know about their performance and what they're doing history wise, it's like
Damn. Yeah.
so.
Yeah, I haven't had a lot of cars either. I haven't, like you said, you know, there's people that go like, oh, had all kinds of cars. I'm like, damn, I don't know how you do it.
I met someone, they listed like 10 cars. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm like, and I thought I was cool for going through three.
Yeah, that's
I'm
a
like,
trip. That's so crazy. And as far as like your collection of like models, like where do you like have you reached a point where you can't collect that many? Like where you're kind of like, all right, I'm running out of room.
no, I still have room. It's so bad because like right now they're stored under my table, but like you can always make room. I would get rid of clothing to make room in my closet for model kits. So
Yeah, yeah, just
it's a
moving stuff.
problem. And that's all it takes. And you're like, what are you gonna do? I'm gonna go donate, all this clothes for what? You're like, I need space in my closet. Like, you're like, don't judge
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, I feel like half of my closet, I used to have it full of like clothes and I just took like half and I just put it away. And then the other, like I have half clothes and the other is just like I have stuff stacked up and I'm like, all right, that's it. I could just fold it or just toss it over there, you know?
The funny one is I gave up acrylic nails when I started working on real cars because I don't know if you remember when I first started building, every time I did a build, I had matching nails.
Hmm.
Like, when I did the Golf and I took it, the GT, and I took it to a show the first time, I had nails to match it. And like when people would come up, they're like, "What's your new build?" I would show them my nails, and they would go find it. So it was
Oh,
like it was like a little game. And like as soon as I started working on real cars, I told my mom. My mom's like, "Go get your nails done." I'm like,
uh,
I'm like, Mom, like number one, they're getting destroyed. Number two, I'm like, it's such a waste of money. I'm like, I'd
yeah,
rather go buy car parts or,
something else. Yeah.
I'd rather go to Burbank House of Hobbies and go run into the guys there and be like, hey, what's new?
Yeah, like check it out, the new lineup. No,
Well,
that's cool.
they're bad because like I have a connection with them right now, a few guys there where it's like when a kit comes out and I'm like, hey, I need this.
Yeah.
They kind of keep an eye out. And it's weird because like there was a day I was working on cars and I was with Daniel and we were friggin' way past LA. And I looked at him and I'm like, hey, I want to go to Burbank House of Hobbies randomly. And at
Uh,
that point, I knew that someone is holding on to the one of these kits for me.
yeah.
And I was like, just randomly, I'm like, hey, I want to go today. And Danny, like, we won't have time because by the time we get, I'm like, fine. And then I got a text that evening from one of the guys that works at Burbank House of Hobbies saying, hey, and he just sent a picture of the box. And
Dang,
it
it's
was so
here.
ironic. Yeah, ironically, though, at the same time, telling Daniel, hey, I need to go to Burbank today, was the same time, like 20 minutes after that, he took the picture and sent it to me through Instagram. So it's like a lot of weird stuff happens too. Or like,
Yeah.
or
No,
like if,
that spot's dope. I remember like back then I would drive from Oxnard all the way over there to hit that place. Now I'm like I'm probably like 20 minutes away from there. I'm not too far from it now, from Burbank.
it's
And
a
it's cool because it's right off the 5 freeway or the 130, what is it? The
134 or something
yeah,
like
the
that.
134. So it's like they're in the middle between both freeways right there.
So what I was gonna say too is like, so since I started with scale modeling, a lot of weird stuff happens too, where
Mhm.
it's like, I don't know whether to call it law of attraction or what, but it's like want something and it just appears for me. Happens all the time in the most weird way. So like
Yeah.
there was a market that I went to, like it was just a vendor show, no actual competing. And I remember walking in, I was with Daniel, and Daniel, I don't know why. Daniel's like, okay, we walked in together, and Daniel's like, I'm gonna go to the left and start on that side and move in. And for
Yeah.
some reason, I could feel this like attraction. And I'm like, what the hell is calling me? I walk right into the center of the show, and
Uh-huh.
like there's people everywhere. And I see like, okay, there's two gentlemen who I always go to and I always stop by their booth. and they're just sitting there, and I start looking, I'm like, hey, how are you guys? I start looking fast at the kits in front of them, and I found this is an amazing little kit.
Damn, that looks dope.
Yeah, I'm like, GTM Mercedes are like, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful kit. So I go, and
Damn,
like
that
at that
boxer
point,
looks
I think
vintage, huh?
it is. Oh yeah, this is old as heck.
That looks
Yeah.
dope.
Oh, I can't wait. But so like I didn't know that Daniel has been wanting a kit like that forever. But I walk in, and I find these guys, and I'm like, boom, boom, boom. And I pulled two kits aside. I'm like, I want this 100%. And I was freaking out over this AMG kit, because I'm like, my mom owned a Mercedes when I was younger. I'm like, it just, the resemblance. I'm like, and
There's
it's
a
a race car.
connection.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm like 100% it's done. My dad had a yellow Ferrari, not Ferrari. What am I saying? A yellow Model T Roadster when I was growing up. So like the yellow Mercedes, I was going nuts. But like I saw that, and I'm like, this is cool. Daniel, I handed all my cash to when I came to the show, because I'm like, you better hold it, because I know I'm spending. So I end up finding Daniel. I'm like, hey, come over. We walk over to the vendor's booth, and I start looking, and Daniel's like, immediately, he's like looking at this kit, and the guy goes to go grab it because he knows I already want it.
Mm-hmm.
Daniel's like, oh, are you kidding me? He's like, I've been looking for that kit and bought. And the guy just turns to me and goes, I'm giving this kit to you. And Daniel's like, are you effing kidding me? He's like, what? Like, what is going on right now? And I told Daniel, I'm like, nothing. I was walking through, and I'm like, you took off. But I said I could feel this thing, and I was getting called to go to this area.
Yeah, to get
I
it.
found, yeah, like I found a kid that he would have in a heartbeat spent who knows how much for. And I had a vendor literally just grab it to me, because he's like, it's so funny. He's like, you're so excited. He's like, this is making me feel good to give this to you. And I was like, are you kidding me?
That's
So
dope.
it's like, yeah, like my whole entrance into scale modeling and like certain things that have happened, it's like, it's insane. Like, and for the people, for the people that have been with me since day 1 and 2, when I first got any awards, and I was like, I don't know if you know this, but there was a time at SoCal Open when I got called, and I'm pretty sure I cussed. I said a curse word. So it's like the next time I was back at that show, there was like a guy or two that came up, and they're like, weren't you that girl that said blah, blah, blah? And I was like, oh no, I definitely said holy F.
Yeah,
Not, you know, because I was like, in that moment, I was like, holy. So it's like,
that's cool.
It's crazy. But yeah, it's like a lot of weird stuff happens too, where like kits just appear for me, or like even the cabinets. Like the day I found them, it had just been posted like hours before I found it. And it's like certain things like I just feel like I'm meant to be here. I don't know.
Destiny.
It's weird, but it feels like it, you know?
Yeah. No, it's like you're experiencing it, and you just don't know how to explain it, but that's kind of what it is. And you're just going with the flow, you know?
And it's like when you mentioned like it went from, you know, scale models and having fun, and now it's a combination of scale models and working on real cars. It's like trying to, you know, eventually get that Porsche, the 944, out onto a track, and just having fun with that. It's crazy to also see in this last year and a half or so how much I'm changing and the person I'm becoming.
It's cool seeing your Instagram, because you do post a lot of content, like with updates with what you're working on, and you know, and it's one of those things that, you know, it keeps all of us informed with what's going on. And you know, a lot of us, we are intrigued. We you know, it's like your story, like you're telling us your story, and we're just taking it in as we're seeing like the stuff. But it's cool to see, because like, you know, you're part of the model car community, but at the same time, it's like we're all like rooting for you as well. And we see the talent you have in that level you're at, and we just want to see you push it more and more, you know, to that next. So
And that's honestly the biggest gift that I've gotten with meeting Daniel, and him introducing me to this hobby, and him kind of going through his own troubleshooting and, you know, what works and doesn't work. And now he comes to me and he's like, look, this one thing took me, you know, months to learn. This is how you do it. Now try. And it's kind of having that balance too, where it's like, it's helped me a lot to be able to progress to this point. Like, yes, I've done a lot of art, and certain techniques like stained glass making and woodwork.
Hmm.
And like photography too, when you're doing kids photo shoots and you're setting up cake smashes or
Yeah.
first year, you know, little setups with the parents, there's a lot of like thinking and art that goes into it, but
Yeah. I'm
it's
all thinking
incredible.
when you said cake smash, I'm all thinking of my daughter when she turned one. We did
Yeah,
that with
yeah,
her.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like I used to be that crazy person that has backdrops and professional lighting, and I go to
Yeah.
someone's house and I'm setting up with furniture that I've painted purple and attaching balloons and doing the styled cake where I'm picking the colors and telling, Ralph's, hey, I want this color specific. Like
Yeah. That's
it's
cool.
crazy. So, and like it's nuts too, because like a lot of people don't know this, but people look at it like it's weird for a girl to be in the automotive community. What people don't realize is, I come from a family of artists and mechanics.
Yeah.
And like my grandfather on my dad's side was a mechanic. And then it led to my dad, coming to the US out here and running an automotive like an automotive and truck business my entire life until the date he died. So even with that, it's like I grew up in an environment where both my mom and my dad were working in this industry, working around cars, having car shows, doing all this stuff. So it feels like home. And I think
Yeah.
it's also been very comforting. It sounds so weird. It's also been like really comforting to be around cars this much and just enjoying something that, you know, it's kind of been big in what my family has done to kind of come out here and establish a life and
Hmm.
like that passion, because I don't think my dad would have ever gotten into customizing and modifying trucks and cars if he didn't really have that passion for vehicles himself. And
Yeah.
it kind of rubbed off on us, good or bad.
That's dope.
My mom's a car junkie too. Sometimes like a
Yeah.
car goes by, I see her reaction, I'm like, good. I'm like, it's not just me. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. She looks. That's
yeah,
cool.
I'm like, whether it's a car, like for her, it's Cessnas.
Hmm.
Anytime she hears a Cessna in the air, she's like, that's a Cessna, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just
Oh,
like,
nice.
it's funny, you know?
Yeah, I have a friend who that's like his nickname, or like his middle name, not nickname, his middle name. And I was like, I had never, when I was a kid and I met him, he was like, he told me his name and then his middle name. I was like, I've never heard of that word. That sounds cool though. And he's like, yeah, my dad, like those were his favorite planes. So
So
he
cool.
he gave me that middle name, and I'm like, oh, okay. And I was like, and then the more I would hear it, I was like, damn, it has a nice ring to it. Sounds
It
dope.
does. It does. Like my mom, like some people in the Ventura show have met my mom because she came not to this last show, the one that was previous. And like my mom is so cute. I'm telling you. Because like she goes out to a show and you're there, I'll
Mhm.
introduce you and you'll
Yeah,
see
yeah.
like
I would like to meet
she's
it.
very she's like she's so adorable, and like she's went from like not being so proud of scale modeling, and then she saw like the awards and then the community, and she went to a
Yeah.
show where like for her it was watching a gentleman that was probably, I have, by the way, a bunch of Hot Wheels too, but it was for her coming to the Ventura show, I was seeing a like 80-year-old something gentleman, and it was so cute. He was taking all of his Hot Wheels out and he was
Oh,
like examining each and every Hot Wheel and then putting it on the table. And the same
yeah.
thing when he closed up, he grabbed every single Hot Wheel, examined front, back, and
Dang.
side, and put it away. And it took that moment, and my mom was standing there. And like I said, my grandfather, who's the jeweler, who'd spent a lot of time being patient, she saw that and she was like, oh my gosh, like, I wanted to break down and cry. It reminded me of my father. And I told my mom, I'm like, that's pretty cool. I'm like, at least you know why I go to these shows and why when I see those gentlemen, that have their little vendor booth and they're selling Hot Wheels, I always stop by and I always buy Hot Wheels, which is why I've started a little collection. And it's like, just that moment too. It's like, it's too cute. And seeing my mom be like, out of the whole show, that was the one thing that impacted her. She's like, that gentleman and his Hot Wheels. She's like, it was just the most precious thing to see the way he was treating them so carefully. I'm like, yeah, I'm like, I'm supposed to be like that with my models too, but you know, like I'm a little rough.
Yeah, I have them on each hand. Nah, that's cool.
You saw that? Like
Yeah, I
I
was
go,
like, yeah, you're making me nervous. I was like,
but
okay, I'm drop one.
I do that. Like I'll go to a show, and when someone, and maybe it's because I'm still new to building and I don't respect the amount of time I put into the build yet. That's probably why. Like earlier today, I did something and I'm not proud of it, but I have to re-epoxy the wing. It's off at least on one side right now.
Oh, dang. I'm sure
But
you'll be good.
yeah, it's like those little things where it's like I'll go to a show, and when someone is really passionate about my model and they're like, "How did you do that?" I literally just go to the table and
You'll
like
bring it
there's been
over.
times, yeah, like there's been times in the middle of judging. I'm just like, I don't give a shit about the show. I'm like, this guy that's been a vendor sitting over there all day wants to see my model.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just go up, I grab it, and like people are like, "Don't touch it, bro." I'm like, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. I grab it and I go to that vendor and like check it out. They're like so appreciative that I've gone
Dang.
out of my way to like show them my
It's
work.
wrong, yeah.
It's cool. So it's the community, it's like the respect, especially for like the older people that have been in this a lot longer.
Hmm.
It's cool. And like you meet a lot of like very, I don't know what the right word is, but very like passionate people. And
Yeah.
to see the way that they are with their collections. And then we think about all the boxes of things that are waiting to get built just sitting around.
Dang, I
It's kind of
know.
like,
I always feel like when I buy a model kit at a show or wherever, I'm always like, dang, I'm bringing you home. And then it's like when you take off that lid off the box, it's like the model's like looking at you, you know?
I swear.
And you're just like, it's just chilling, but it's almost like it's waiting for you to give it life, you know, to
Like
give it that soul into it. Dang.
it's like this little prototype. It's a
Mhm.
BMW. I think it was initially supposed to be a BMW prototype. I don't even know because it's like this was the modifications I started before I did the Ford GT to cut into the Revell engine, you know, that little engine bay. But this is where I wanted to experiment with cutting, which I did to the front, and adding, just modifying, trying to add little character brows. And I already bought decals for this, but it's another thing that, you know, like you can tell before I was comfortable with cutting, I started to black out what I may end up cutting to have the, you know, little diffuser sitting, but we'll see. It's
Damn.
yeah, it's like there's a lot of things that are unfinished, or you start doing one thing and you're modifying and you realize, oh shit, there's like 5 other issues you did not think of. And
Mhm.
so, you know, this is something too that it's sitting on my bench, and it has been for a long time, but I hope I get back to it soon. I feel like I'll have more fun with that now that I've gotten the bug out of the way. You get
Mhm.
to experiment for that first stage of modifications and customizing versus where I'm at now. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
a
it's a trip. Like sometimes you have a like you start on a kit or you have this idea, right? You want to do it, but then it's almost like you get started on it, but then you put it away and then you get through these builds, which ups your skill level. And then you go, oh, now I'm ready for that one. Like now I'm ready to tackle that build.
So how do you build? Because like I hear that there are people that will start the kit and like close the box and put it
Mhm.
away. And like what I'm doing now, other than my prototype, which is unfinished, I'm trying to make it where the moment I open a box, I'm completing that build
Yeah.
before I move on to the next. How do you do it?
Yeah, I don't do it like that. I used to like kind of want to pressure myself to do that. Like the minute I open it, like basically once it's done, then I could open up another kit. But then it's just really hard for me to resist. Like, because I'll go to a show, I'll buy another kit, then another kit, and then next thing you know, I'm just like opening up everything.
That's
And what was happening is that I was prepping these bodies, and I was, let's just say, 3 different kits, 3 bodies, prepping, modifying, custom work. But from all that sanding and primering, sometimes that would be a bad thing because I'd burn myself out. because there
Yeah.
was just so much sanding. I'd burn myself out to the point where I'm like, all right, these are going back in the box. I'm not gonna mess with anything because you don't see any like progression, even though there is, but like there isn't. It's just you're just burned out.
Yeah.
So then what I had to do is kind of step away and be like, all right, I just want to focus on the one, right? But then what happens is I'll do the modifications, the primer, then I get paint, and then I get clear. Once clear is on that body, then I
Yeah.
put that one away, and then I go to the next, and then I play catch up. Like, all right, I gotta layer some paint on this one. I gotta get it to clear, and then now it's on to the third one. You know, um, I have to kind of like rotate stuff to keep myself excited. Like I have a Honda EF9, it's already painted. All it needs to be is clear coated for the exterior body. And then I have this other Honda where my focus on that was to learn more about the stance with trying to use all the parts from the undercarriage because sometimes I'm used to being like, you know what, I'm not going to show the bottom. So I'm just going to slam this car, maybe, put a rod or whatever, and then boom, that's it. Simple, right? Because it's more of a static curbside. But with this one, I was like, no, I kind of want to put everything in there. I want to challenge myself to modifying to learn about lowering on this Honda to make it make sense in case someone's like, hey, can I see the bottom? I don't want to be like, oh, no, I don't want to. No, I'm gonna be like, here it is. And then I have the Liberty Walk. Um, it's the Huracan that I need to finish. It's already painted and everything. I just gotta put the little rivets on the wide body.
I'm expecting for that to be done by SoCal Open.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And I'm expecting that you're gonna put it on the table. Maybe?
Yeah, maybe I'll bring it though. I'll have it done for sure. But yeah, it's
I
like
want to see that.
I just gotta do rivets and basically just assemble it, and that's it. Because everything else has been painted and clear coated and you
I
know
build so differently. Like and I don't know, I guess over time you kind of like start to figure things out more, but like there's no process for me whether I start from like the body first or details. That's something that I'm like insane about. Because
yeah.
it's like there's so many times that I'll start a kit and it's like I'm figuring out the livery after I've already done like roll cage details and things like that. So it's cool to hear about other people's process too, because it's especially when you're newer, you're still in that phase of trying to not waste so much time or paint. So
Yeah, I used to make the mistake back then of like opening up a kit and then not even pre-building it or even getting the stance or with the wheels. I would just get the kit, modify the body, paint it, and then after all that was done, I was like, all right, in my mind, this is the way this car is gonna look. But then I would start running into problems with fitment issues and all these things. And I'd be like, dang, I feel like I wasted all this time, like I did it in reverse and from, speaking with other modelers and doing all the different interviews and seeing everyone's take, it kind of made me like approach things a bit different where now I'm like, all right, now I'm saving up some time and some heartache, for later because there are some builds that back then I was like, I already knew this is never gonna get done. I'm better off giving this away to someone or just selling it. I don't know, because I'm not gonna finish it.
why not?
It was just like being burned out from it, like the inspiration, the vision I had for it, and then just knowing like, dang, I gotta go back to square one on this. Like I had this one, it was a resin body, a Jimmy Flintstone body of a Merc, and the sides it was like wood paneling, right? Like that's what it would have to replicate. But the thing about this body of this wagon is that the roof was chopped. And in my mind, I was like, I want to use that body because it's nice and chopped, but I don't want to use the wood paneling. So I'm gonna fill all that in And like in the beginning, I ended up just pouring so much CA glue
No.
over the like inside instead of just using putty or something. I was more because I wasn't really using putty. I was like, I'm gonna use glue. So I used so much glue accelerator, dude. It was hours of sanding and sanding and sanding
Whoa.
like crazy, and it turned into months, right? Because I would primer it, and then I could see like blemishes, or I could see how it was off. And finally, once I was like really done with it, like, all right, the body, maybe I could paint it now, whatever. I just wasn't feeling it no more. I was like, I don't like it. And then I would think back, what would I do different? Instead of using the glue, I should have used at least like a 1 millimeter of styrene, like sheet,
Okay. Yeah.
and just fit it in there, and then glue the around it, and then
Yeah.
smoothing that out, and that would have saved me
So
months.
much time. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so it's like things like that I'm kind of like, you know that burned outness. But now it's different. Now it's like I had to go through those struggles
Yeah.
to figure out my game plan now whenever I approach a new model.
It's good though.
Yeah.
And like it's so funny when you're talking about getting burnt out, you don't know what happened to me during this Beetle Volkswagen bug build. There's nothing worse than applying and applying and applying and applying, and you're getting the same result every time, not realizing that you need to leave thicker layers or maybe allow the blemish to stay so you can build on it on the next layer. I'm like, so it's good. It's just that, like you said, that trial and error, and like little things too. It's like all those little techniques on sanding. And then I'll call Daniel and I'm like, hey, so I realize I'm having trouble with this corner or whatever. And he's like, well, how are you sanding? And he starts to ask me these questions like, how are you standing? What angle are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. And I'll start to explain it to him. And he's like, okay, he's like, Kristen, have you thought about this? He's like, think about, physics and pressure. And I'm like, damn it. Okay. I'm like, let me go at this again. So sometimes I realize too, it's like I said, like that little group chat or that little group text where you go to someone or like in the group and you're like, dude, this is what I'm dealing with, blah, blah, blah. And sometimes like it's even that back and forth that can re-inspire someone or something, or someone looks at that build and they're like, shit, well, what if you cut this kit and now put these modified doors? And you're like, shit, never even thought about it. So it's cool. But yeah, like going through that process, I mean, it happened every single build I'm looking at. Like even right now, I'm like, I still have the bug. And even though people love it, there's so much stuff on there that I hate, or so much stuff on there that I know I made a mistake or the glue ran over just a tad. And it's like it bugs the hell out of me. But it's like seeing that progress and not giving up. It's damn worth it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
To
you
not
know,
lose that little fire
mhm.
too.
Yeah, and then I also think like at that time, for example, like that car I was talking about, that wagon, at that point in time, I know I was into like custom cars, My mindset right now, like I wouldn't even want to touch that right now because I'm not like I love the custom cars, but my mindset right now is into like the JDM stuff at the
Yeah.
moment. And I know like later, because even one of my friends told me, he's like, look, right now you're into loiters, you're gonna get the customs, you're gonna get JDM. Later you're gonna get to like muscle cars, the race cars, and then you're gonna come back.
Race cars before muscle cars. Come
Yeah,
on.
so he's all like, just do what you're into, and I kind of been following that, because even with Gundams too, like there was a phase where that's all I was doing too, especially during the pandemic. That's
What?
all I was doing for a minute because the baby was gonna be born, and I didn't want to have any like paints or anything, so it was more of a snap, kit builds for that moment. And then I would like scribe and be like, all right, this is as much as customization as I could go. And then I had to take a break. I had to step away for like I think a year or two. You know how you were saying like when you have a family, like you don't have the time.
Yeah.
That's what happened. It took me like at least a year and a half to step away from everything, and then finally be like, all right, back to building, back to doing the podcast, back to like content, back to going to shows, you know? And I mean, everything comes with its time, but you know, no matter what, if whether you're building or not building, it's always nice to see what you guys are doing, you know, through Instagram.
But you have to remember too that I know it's hard, but we also still want to see what you do. And like even at NNL, I wish I knew that, you know, what was sitting on the tables were like new builds. Cause like
Yeah.
there was the truck, the colorful truck.
Yeah, that one was that wasn't mine, that
That
colorful
was
truck. That was
who
Wes
what
Salazar.
yeah.
Yeah, he had that one on display. I had like two GTRs, an old school Skyline, Haku, and then also the newer ones, like the Liberty Walk. Those were those two. I had this other car, but I didn't bring it out. It was just kind of like I didn't want to put too many cars. I just wanted to have those few right there. They were on the table. But I mean, you know, we're still gonna run into each other and see each other at future shows. So, you know,
I need to get you to build a race car. That's all.
dude, I'll be down for sure. I know that time's gonna come, and I know, you know, when it does happen, I'm gonna have to link up with you and Daniel and be pick your guys' brains and be like,
I'm
all right,
saying
like,
no, it's not even that we would link up. We would have like a whole day. Maybe go to
yeah.
even go to a museum and look at cars, like whatever you're up for. Like I'm I'm so bad. I love going to car shows. And when
Mm,
I see a car that I'm building, like when I was doing the Ford GT and I went
yeah.
to Malibu and there was a car show and I saw like an older Ford GT there, I literally
Dang.
waited around and when the guy came up, like these guys started talking to me. I'm like, who's the owner of this car? They're like, this person. I'm like, I need to talk to him. Like, I want to see the engine. I'm like, I'm building this car. And it's like those little things, but it's like when you get so committed, and that's why I can't say too much about what I'm building next. But when you get committed to a project and you start going to car shows and you start seeing and like, you know, Daniel and I are the same type of crazy. We went to a lowrider show and we were literally on the floor, like studying and looking at the bottoms of these lowriders and like what these guys are doing to the actual cars. So that way we can implement it, you know, maybe down the line, whether it's like little modifications, like you said, you know, sometimes it's the drive shaft and you'll cut it out because the bottom doesn't show, but it's like, how can you modify that thing where it's like every time someone picks up, you know, whatever, and then suddenly there's a drive shaft, they're like, oh shit, how the hell
Mhm.
did that person do it? Or where did they get it from? And it's
Yeah.
cool. But I think like that motivation and then going to car shows, one-to-one scale definitely helps out, or vice versa, like going to scale model shows and you're studying the shit out of someone else's build. Because like you'll see that people like, what are you doing at towards the end of the show? You'll see me going around talking, having fun, shopping, and then at the very end, I'm like down in front of those builds, just like picking up new little techniques or looking at how small they're interwrapping a loop or adding a little, I don't know, anything to their build. But it's like so small in scale that you're like, shit, I never thought about that. You're like, next time I'm going to try to incorporate it or try to bring something else in that's like, hey, I bet no one thought of this. Like
Yeah. No, yeah,
it's
I wish that at like at shows after they did awards, I still wish there would be like at least like an extra 30 minutes to chill to look at the cars, or at least people place their award next to their car so people can view. Because sometimes people just grab their stuff and they take off like right
and
away.
and honestly, like I don't know if that's people that get mad. And that's kind of like one of the downfalls, I'd say, of this hobby is like you'll see a lot of times that people go to shows and it's like if they don't win, you know,
Mhm.
it's like you'll hear a lot of talk about certain things that are like, I don't know. You know, it's like, or like you'll see that at the end of an award ceremony, it's like, especially for me, like I can speak because it's like I'm new to the hobby and it's like I've had a lot of backlash since I started building. It's like
Mhm.
there's that hard balance between being at a show and like enjoying it and then people actually getting upset because there's someone else that is technically taking an award that they feel they should have gotten.
Mm,
There's a
yeah.
lot of stuff that goes a lot deeper where it's like, and you kind of take a step back or like, you know, there was one show, it was actually a shock. There was one show that Daniel and I went to. We drove all the way up to Lancaster. We had other people that were meeting up there too, that are
Mhm.
just like heavy in the hobby. But we ended up going, we found out that at one point I asked him, I'm like, hey, I'm like his plane. I'm like, did your plane win? You know, like his huge
Yeah,
plane.
that
Custom,
custom
like,
one, that big one, yeah.
yeah, I'm like, did he win? And he's like, no. I'm like, what happened? And we went and started talking, and then we found out that one of the judges of that show basically didn't judge his plane.
Dang.
They basically came into the show as a judge and were like, okay, well, this is first and this is second. And they
Oh
were like,
wow.
screw everyone else's
They didn't
builds.
even look at, yeah, they didn't look at it.
They didn't take the time to look at like
Damn.
who scratch built what. And like I realized, like I feel like things like that tend to happen a lot too, where you go to a show and it's like someone will scratch build or do this intense work, and it's like because someone knows someone or they've seen work on
Mm,
Instagram or whatever, it's like
yeah.
they can come in and take full, you know, like judging ownership of a show without actually considering like those little things. And that's why even for me, it's like when I started placing, you have to understand I was in a real battle of like, okay, I have like melted decals on my first build. I'm like, how the hell? Why are they picking my build? And
Mm,
eventually it took a few judges going, okay, number one, it's because it's your first build. And even though you have these flaws, you did this right, or you did this right. And I was like, okay, fine, but, and I was still trying to argue it. And I'm like, okay, just let it go. Cause I'm like, you
yeah.
know, it's like almost that thing within myself and like being my own artist that like my work is never good enough, you know? Hence why I was an award-winning photographer and I never put my awards up on my wall. It's like taking that moment to almost like shine back on yourself is, I don't know. It's like weird to me because like, you know, so it's like even this whole thing with scale modeling, and it's rough because like the community can just as easily be welcoming as they can be able to deter you away. And like I personally have come across a situation where an incident happened within scale modeling that I was ready to quit and be like, I'm so done. And it's not, it has nothing to do with the hobby or the community. It has to do with a person. So it's kind of like a bummer too, because like it makes a hell of a show when you drive all the way out. You spend the time with people, you're communicating, or whatever. And then at the end of the show, it's like you stick around, or like that moment that someone's like, they come up to you and they're like, hey, let's go grab lunch after. You're like, oh my God, done. You know, and it's like that has become the way of almost like you said, sticking around. But it's a shame too that at the end of a show, you'll see people just grab their models and gone. They don't even say bye. There's no talking. It's like, and it kind of makes you wonder, like, okay, what's it gonna be like the next time? You
Hmm.
know?
Yeah.
And you see the balance of people that like fully support you and people that are like almost like hating on you. And I'm kind of, you know, it's like it's the reason I stopped posting as much too. I stopped getting to the point of like trying to please people, but just trying to kind of do my own thing. And then when someone is coming around and they're passionate and you can tell, I'm all about it. I'm like, you know, let's
No,
learn, let's talk it
definitely.
up. It's good. But yeah, it's like it's rough. And I think like being also a female in a mostly male dominated hobby, it
Yeah.
gets interesting.
No, it is. It's a trip because when I was at my trip in Spain, like I went to an area where in Macba, it's like where all the skaters skate, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, that thing's been famous for like more than 20 years. Like a lot of skaters skate, and it's mostly male dominant like skaters, right?
Yeah.
But the scene has changed probably within the last 10 years or so, where now there's a huge like a group of female skaters that are there skating, right? And they're killing it. But I know that in the beginning, it was like breaking that barrier was hard, right? That support wasn't there. Now it's there. Now they're part of the crew, they're sponsored, there's all these things going on, which is dope. But now, obviously there's a lot. And like you could say like right now you're like in the forefront, right? Like it's like breaking that barrier. You're there, and yeah, it's gonna be tough, but it's definitely like hang in there, and just do you, because eventually there's going to be others that are going to emerge too. And then, you know, it's not going to just be a minority, it's going to become more of a norm thing.
I I hope so. I mean, I think that there would have to be a lot that would change within the skill modeling like community and like mainly like club holders. that they would have to be willing to do in order to really try to be more welcoming to even having like more women, or, you know, being in support of women coming out and building. Because like you definitely see that. I mean, it was like from day one of going to a show, and like imagine day one that I go and I put a build on the table, and it was I guess like harmless joking, but it's like, was it really? Where I had someone come up and they're like, from like literally like a group of like four guys standing around my build, and I came up and started talking. I'm like, oh my, I'm like, they're like, who built this? I'm like, I did. They're like, I don't know, the whole conversation, like at one point they're like, oh, like we're gonna go outside and beat her up. And you know, it's like little things like that where it's like it can be taken like lightly, but it's like you have to keep in mind, like I'm a new builder that's walking into a room full of people that have been competing with each other for years. And it's like the amount of things that have happened that I can say it's not very welcoming to like women, or to people in general. It's like it's kind of rough. And I feel like it's a lot of culture and people kind of feeling comfortable with where things are at. And then you see a girl walk in, or you see like a younger kid walk in, and it's almost like, I remember the San Diego show, even where there was a gentleman right when I walked in, and he was one of the head, I don't know if it was judges, but like he was helping coordinate everything for that show. And like right when I walked in and I put my two builds on the table, he turned to me and he's like, oh, you should take your build and put it with the juniors. And I was
Really?
like, ha
Yeah.
ha ha. I'm like, I'm definitely a full adult coming here to compete, but thank you. And he's like, oh, I'm just saying that because the juniors are minority, just like how women competing here are. And I was like,
Man.
ooh. I'm like, I'm just gonna shut up and walk away.
Yeah.
And that tends to happen a lot too with this community, where it's like certain things will happen and it's like I tend to retract to like keeping quiet or not overreacting, because it's like it's so easy to get upset, or
No, yeah. It's
to look
almost
at a
it's almost
situation.
like it's definitely, I can see it, like it's definitely fueling you,
Ooh,
but
it does.
you're letting your models do the talking.
Yeah, and like
It,
it
it's
sucks too though, because like when you have people, and like, you know, there's times that Daniel will like nudge me and be like, hey, listen, like listen to
Mhm.
those people, because they don't know that I'm the builder, especially when I was newer. And I would listen to them talking shit and they're like, yeah, like look at this DJ, she did it, and they say, and I'm just sitting there and I'm like, you know, and I'm looking at Daniel, I'm like, can I go say something? And he's just like take the bigger role, you know, like
No,
don't
yeah,
say
yeah.
anything. And I'm like, okay, just let it be. And it goes to show too, like you don't need to fight every single battle. But at the
Mhm.
same time, it's like there's a lot of things that are coming up, and it's just like in society, it's like you have to be willing to fight for, to like be heard or to be respected. And I don't think that has even ended from the time of like, you know, I went to PECLA, the Porsche Experience Center in Carson, where I ran into, I believe her name is Margie Haas. I believe it's Margie, I think. I'm blanking on her first name. I'm like, I'm so tired. I'm like, I don't know. If it's not Margie, it's, I know the last name is for sure Haas. And like, she was one of the first females to race at Le Mans. And even it was like, it was such a cool experience to be at a show and to meet this woman. And when she started to share some of the things that she had to overcome, just to be able to, you know, be respected like the men. Or when
Mhm.
she won a race and she had the officials reaching out to her husband to go, oh, like you must have driven for your wife because she went ahead and placed. She can't get a record like that, you know,
Mhm.
a time like that. And it's so many different things that just being a woman, it's like you may not think about it, but it's like you have to almost like come in and establish that respect. And it's like it's very unfortunate for the people that are so accustomed to kind of being set in their ways that they don't understand that there's a new boundary or a new respect that kind of has to be put into place.
Yeah.
It's crazy to me that like I can talk to someone that was like back in, I don't know, like the 70s or 80s in racing, and we're still dealing with the same issues. And this is just a scale modeling community, you
No,
know?
yeah, it's definitely the culture. It's very like it, I don't know. Sometimes people act weird when they're not cultured or used to different things, right? They want everything a certain way or whatever. So like for someone to tell you like, oh, put your models with the juniors because they're the minority and all this stuff, it's that mentality, it's very old school. It's very like, you got to adapt to the modern thing. You got to kind of open up your eyes and see what's up. And you also kind of have to think about like, I don't know, like, don't you have daughters? Don't you have a mom? Don't you have
Mhm.
an
Yeah.
aunt? Like it's like you got to consider like, would you want someone, saying stuff to, family members and like that. And like it's like I think about my daughter, she's 2, she's gonna be 3, and like recently she's picking up, she's very amused by paint, right? She sat with her, she does her little paintings, whatever, just seeing, dipping in water and paint and doing all these things, right? And I'm just like tripping out on her, and I know that she knows I'm into the model car. She doesn't touch my stuff, but I get her a Hot Wheel or whatever. And I know at some point, she's gonna get influenced and want to do some of the stuff I do. And I'm gonna support her and push her, And I know at some point she's gonna hit those like barriers where someone's gonna say something or whatever. But in my mind, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna help you push you to the next level, where it's like but I think, hopefully by then, but who knows, hopefully that's normal, but it might not be still, it might
I
still
hope.
be a fight by
Yeah.
then.
Yeah.
So it's crazy, but
I'm forewarning you. I'm forewarning you that daughters do pick up what their fathers do
you do,
because
right? Yeah.
oh, 100%. My dad was always like, shit. He's like, if only you were a boy. And he used to always make boy jokes to me because
Yeah.
he's like, you would have been the perfect boy for me. And I'm like, that's so
uh
weird because I'm a girl. I'm like, don't say that. But it's
yeah,
like there the way that, and then maybe it's because I'm like the youngest. I don't know, but like the way
yeah,
that certain things get picked up, it's like, yeah, I always wanted to be right there next to my dad when he was on the
yeah,
hot rod working on it. Like he would take us in our diapers and put us on the seat and he'd just be wrenching away and doing his thing. So it's
that's
taking
cool.
a good
Oh
toll.
yeah. I mean, like definitely like I said earlier, no, you gotta do you. Like it's not about pleasing anybody or whatever. You know who your core homies are. Like your
Oh
close,
yeah.
your tight knit close homies, and that's it. The circle doesn't have to get too big. Like just
And that's like the unfortunate part. So, like there was actually, I'm not going to go into detail, but there was an incident that happened at a show in San Diego where this person actually is a model car member. And some incident happened, and like just like you said, in that moment of something wrong happening at a show, uh like you said, you really find out who's there for you and who you can turn to and who you can trust.
yeah,
And unfortunately, like that's why I say like it's rough because I look at a lot of the members of this club still and different chapters of this club. And it's unfortunate that there are men in the group that still look at me as not being truthful or
mhm,
look at the situation and don't take it serious. It's
yeah,
very, very unfortunate. And it's fine because over time, I only hope that if women continue to be a part of this,
mhm,
like really taking on skill modeling, that eventually some of those like positions that have been held by these guys for so long that are so accustomed to their ways eventually changes. But
yeah,
yeah, like it's unfortunate. And I've had an incident happen. I still spoke up about it. And it was a big thing for me to speak up. And the way that even watching like certain club members and the way that it was taken as like a joke, it's interesting to see. And me being a journalist, there's certain things that I will and will not tolerate. Unfortunately, that incident, there were two things that were going to happen. I was either going to lash out, which would have been very bad, or I'd break down. And
mhm,
unfortunately, at that show, I broke down, which was okay because it would have been a mess if I reacted.
yeah,
And it got the best of me. And that's why, for some time too, I was like, I'm going to take skill modeling and put it to the side and just give myself time to like heal and work on other stuff.
No,
but
definitely. You have to, because it's
you,
just like,
mentally too, like you
oh
have
heck
to
yeah.
like, yeah, and like now it's unfortunate because every single time I'm going to attend a show, I'm kind of asking around to other people like, hey, is this person going to be there? Are they going to be attending? Because that
Yeah,
level of,
it's kind of whack to be in the same room, but
it is
you know,
it
yeah.
really is. And I think the level of anxiety I go through just prepping for a show, knowing that someone like that is going to be there, it's very different than any other show.
Yeah.
So it's unfortunate too how like a moment of someone making a bad decision can affect, you know, people and the outcome. And I was lucky too that things did not escalate further, whether it was my reaction or that person doing what they did. So
Mhm.
it's a weird situation, but that is a perfect example of how just in the last year there's been, you know, this situation of having a new fellow modeler that comes in and luckily like that's kicking butt and
Yeah, that's another thing too. When you got someone new coming in and they're
it's
doing
a,
their thing, I mean,
and not expecting to win either. Like you have to understand
yeah.
every single show I've been to walk away with an award, that's insane.
Hmm.
It's like people were joking. They started when I first started, they're like, oh yeah, she must be rookie of the year. And then I realized I'm like, holy shit, am I rookie of the year? Because it's like you get so many awards and you're brand new and you came in during like right when COVID, it was like
Yeah.
mid-COVID,
Hmm. Yeah, it's
had already
crazy
been shut
because
down. And it's like that entry
there's people that could spend years and they still don't even reach that level of what you're doing, with your cars and presentation.
trying to do. I'm trying to do. I want to reach a much greater level. And
Yeah, you're not done. You're just scratching the surface.
if you look at Daniel's Opal truck, that is my ultimate goal is to be
Yeah.
able to build like that, where every single little inch of that build is like a mural. Like
Hmm.
you can get lost in the detail. And it's like, you know, like that's the ultimate goal is to be able to build a vision like that and to nail
Yeah.
it. And like you saw, I mean, the plane,
Yeah.
the way that he has to transport that thing to shows, even that, I'm like, the
That's
engineering,
crazy.
yeah, the engineering behind being able to travel with that plane and not have it crack or break, it's like
Hmm.
it's insane.
Yeah.
And it's like there's a lot of things that are going into this community that people are really starting to step up or have been. And it's like there's also the downfall of people that come into the community and, you know, they have such a reputable name or they do such a good job on marketing themselves, but at the end of the day it's like, and you can look at their builds and they're good, they're like clean, but you know, at the end of the day I think the people that are there at these shows too also need to respect the fact that it's like a family friendly community environment.
Yeah. I
And
agree.
it's rough, I mean, it's interesting too because like there's so many women I talk to too and they're like, why would I want to be a part of, and I'm like, I see that too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because it's like, like I wish some of my friends, I have like, friends that don't even build models, but some of them I wish, like, man, I wish you would get into it because I feel like this would benefit you,
Yeah,
especially like mentally with things, just to kind of like not be so stressed out about stuff because, the daily life and, so there's some friends I have who have like even like no hobbies, nothing. All they do is work, family, and that's it. And I'm like, dang, dude, how do you do it? Like that's kind of a trip. But if anything, they support, they like to see, like they root for you and everything. But in my mind, I'm like, man, like, yo, like you should come over or here, I'm gonna give you. And then they're like, nah, nah, I don't wanna do it. And in my mind, I'm like, man, if only this would be awesome, because there's a lot of benefits. And like there's so many benefits when once you're in the mix and you're doing it, everything else, like just think about it, everything else, like the negativities or whatever, it's just noise.
it is.
It's just it's whatever. The cool thing is you have your space. You could be in your room, you could turn on your music, you could put on whatever you want to put on TV, you're in your laptop and just work and concentrate, and you're in a good space right there.
And
And
that's, yeah,
at some point, like, dude, I already know you're gonna travel, you're gonna go to other states and other places, and you're gonna bring your builds, and people are gonna appreciate because you're not you're not local, you're coming from out of town, you know?
Which is crazy. I mean, we've had local shows out here where someone shows up, they're like, I'm here from Texas. I'm like, what? I'm like,
Yeah.
you came from Texas for a show like this? It's like in a gym, you know,
Mhm.
it's like little tables. And I'm like, holy cow. And
Yeah.
these people that are so passionate about the hobby, it's like, cool. That's why
Mhm.
I'm like, I know earlier we talked about the idea of like the different areas and the people that we know. And it's like there's so many people in Texas too that they had a show out there that Pablo and Leo all took off for. And
Yeah.
during that time, all these people were like, dude, you should have been there. You should have been there. Come out. And like for months prior, they were like all inviting me. They're like, dude, just make the trip. And at that time, I'm like, hey,
Yeah.
I'm moving soon. I'm like, no, 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 no. Like
Yeah, there was just a lot going on your end at that point. So yeah, well, that's good that you're all settled in now. And so
getting
hopefully,
there.
you know, you could pre-plan some stuff for later this year. I mean, we're barely gonna be getting into the summer months.
I know.
So
But
and
I do agree too, like whether it has become scale modeling or working on real cars, it's like
mhm,
that moment, it's such a beautiful thing that goes on when you tune into music and
mhm,
you're building and you're just in the zone.
yeah.
Whether it's like real cars or scale models, and then you look at the
Yeah.
time and it's like 4 a.m. You're just like, oh shit, where the hell did time go? And like the whole night
Right.
you've been working, you're like, okay, off to bed. I have to be up at 7.
Crazy. Yeah. No, yeah, it happens. I remember even for like one of my GTRs, just to feel more inspired to complete the build, I had to like go on YouTube and look up that car of people driving it, like
Oh
just
yeah.
show, or even just I always like the 2 3 minute video. They're more like a kind of like the music and the ambience of like the car cruising through the city or
Oh,
just
yeah.
parked and then there's rain. I don't know. I'm just like, all right, I know what I want to do. I need to finish this.
It's funny too, because like when I started with the Porsche, the GT1, Daniel,
Mhm.
that was the first thing he told me. He's like, hey, he's like, now that I see you want to build a car, he's like, watch videos and fall in love. He's like, fall in love with the sound, fall in love with everything. So when you sit there and you're building it, he's like,
Mhm.
put that on in the background, listen to it, and just go at it. And
There
like
you
that helped a lot because like you'll see like you know the Porsche GT1 that I built, when you see that thing really driving on a racetrack and you
Mhm.
see like a friggin' F1 McLaren floating behind it, it's like it's insane.
Yeah.
So it's
Damn.
like that motivation of like especially on into images and like that artistic factor. I definitely agree that like YouTube has been a major
Mhm.
like what is the right word, like mental state changer, where it's like you'll come
Yeah.
home, it's a rough day, you're like fuck, okay, sorry. I didn't
That's all good.
mean
No worries. No
sorry.
worries.
You're like hell. Like you sit down, you start tuning into some videos that get you inspired, and it's like
Yeah.
it can sometimes, like you said, the ambiance or like the noise of the engine just running that you start to
Yeah.
like find this beautiful piece with. But
Yeah. I
yeah,
find
like,
one video and then I check out the person or whoever the media channel. And then
yeah.
I see, oh wait, they have so many different types of music videos. But I mean, they're not music, it's more about the car, but they layer some dope music over it. And I'm like, subscribe, subscribe.
And maybe that's something that you need to maybe over time incorporate to this little YouTube series that you're doing, is every so
Yeah.
often maybe get like B-roll sent to you
Yeah.
and
That'd
you
be
kind of
dope.
yeah, like you tell people, look, like I want this time, this lighting, a picture like this, you know, or a video like this. You show examples, and if they send you the content, you
Mhm.
can do something where it's like you bring in that ambiance and noise into like something sick where it's like just resting and pan
Yeah.
shots.
That'd be
'Cause
pretty.
it's like, you know, it's like if, especially if it's something that you're, how can I say this? Like your mind and like your audio sensories fell in love with, it's more of a reason that you should continue to
Yeah.
try to incorporate that into your own videos and start like a Friday series, you know?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like every Friday they could look forward to hypothetically, you know? And
Yeah.
like you could
Video
have
drop.
yeah, like you could have a bunch of WeTransfer like Dropbox files where people just drop stuff, and like every so often if someone gives you like really cool like B-roll, you're just like, okay, I'm gonna feature this guy this week. He did a good job.
Yeah. I wonder how, you know how some YouTube channels they have it's like live and it's like 24 hours, it seems like.
I don't know how
I
they
don't know
do
how they do
that.
that
I
because
don't know how I do that with meditation stuff.
yeah,
So
I've
yeah.
come across yeah like some music channels, and it's just like the music changes, but it's just like it's running like
Yes.
24 hours. It's
Yeah.
just live, and the same with like even for my daughter, she wants to watch cartoons, and I'm like, all right, we'll put this one, and it's like live like all
Stop.
day,
I
and I'm
know
like,
it's a media big what is it? Like a media trap.
if I could figure out the live thing, it would be kind of cool to just like photo dump videos and photos 24 hours
That would
of
be
new stuff,
cool.
new stuff all the
I
time,
wonder
anything.
I wonder if those are only for music accounts or how that works.
Yeah, I don't know. I gotta look into it now. That got
You
me
should.
curious
You
about
should,
it.
because that's another way to kind of like keep that auto generation going.
Mhm. Yeah,
By having material that's currently someone can land on your page and they're like, oh crap, there's something live right now.
yeah, yeah. That'd be interesting.
It's
Yeah.
it's cool. I like that idea because like I'm that weird person that on a rainy day I'll
Mhm.
go to my car and put on a good song, or at least I used to. Like while
Yeah.
waiting for work, right? I had to go work with kids, like 27 freaking screaming kindergartners. So
Dang.
right before I'm going into work, I'm like sitting in my car, it's raining. I'm like filming the rain on my windshield and
Uh,
listening to music. It's like I like those little moments too. There's something
yeah.
that's like very peaceful about it. So I support your decision.
All right. All right.
You should start with the guys in Spain and be like, look, this is what we're gonna do. This is
Huh.
what I
Are
want.
you guys on board?
Yeah, you guys are gonna put a whole video together. We're
Gotta
gonna put
pitch the idea.
it's
Yeah.
cool. I'm telling you, I'm like seeing that one little, 7-Eleven market little, I don't know, like city idea,
Yeah.
the way
Yeah.
that everyone was standing around it. I had the flashback of being in fourth grade and having my professor,
Dang.
like teacher, build this whole thing of cardboard boxes. And like, there was even a point where this Lego girl walks out of the mall and she's like walking to her car and listening to music. It's like, if there's a way, and I still know where my old elementary teacher is. I wonder if one day I can see if he ever has that video stored.
Yeah, you never know. They might still have it.
He probably still has. It would not shock me. He was on a mission to make sure that every like class that he like left him had some
Mhm.
type of like custom media art. So
On
I'm
there.
telling you, like that experience of like it sounds so lame. That experience of putting your own thing together,
Mhm.
it should become a thing worldwide.
No, that's cool. Well, hey, Kristen, this was awesome. It was cool chatting with you, having you on the podcast. Where can I mean, I know you're on Instagram, so people who are listening and watching, it's at Lionheart Motoring. But is there any other platform or anything that you want to plug, or is it mostly Instagram, your main
That's
one?
mainly that's mainly it. I mean, I'm doing a tiny bit of YouTube, but none of it is like personal content yet. I just have a ton of videos and content I probably should dump from like working on the real cars and
Yeah, forthcoming.
944.
Yeah,
Yeah,
in the
but
future.
it's like that. Eventually, I would love to end up doing a Patreon. I don't know if I'll get to it. I always wanted to do like little like opening like box openings and
Oh yeah, yeah.
like these little videos where you fast forward and you build the kits, and I realize like there's so much other stuff I'd rather do.
Yeah, yeah. That's a
So
lot of work too. So
yeah, like even if you notice, even on Instagram, I've kind of pulled back and I need to get back to that. So
yeah.
hopefully, I mean, more stuff on YouTube, but mainly if there's any 1-to-1 scale or 1/24th scale updates, it's usually Instagram.
Instagram.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Well,
And
thank
thank
you.
you.
Hope to see you at a future show here in Southern California. And we'll stay up to date with you and just share, what content you put out on your Instagram.
I'll
So
tell you this. I'll tell you this. I have something very cool that is in the works. That's all I can say.
dang, all right.
But it's going to be, again, it's going to be another step up and
Yeah.
possibly me doing something that, well, obviously doing something I have not done yet. So
Damn.
it's
Make
like,
sure to tag us though when you unveil it online.
uh,
I know you're gonna unveil it in person, but whenever it comes out online, just tag us so we can share it.
okay.
So
Yeah, and I love what you're doing. I don't know if I've been the first female that you've interviewed.
Yeah, I was
Not
gonna
sure
say
about
you are the first.
yeah.
So this is dope. This is dope.
Yeah, my line.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, like, I love that I can always get on your page and I start looking at new builders and I'm like, ooh, this is someone I need to follow. It's cool, you know.
Yeah.
I
Oh, thank
appreciate what
you.
you're doing and it's been super cool meeting you too. It's like
Likewise.
I said, every time I go to a show and I know you're set up there, it's good and bad because I know
Yeah.
I want to spend a lot of
Just
money
come
with
say
you.
what's up.
I'm like
Just come say
avoiding
what's
it.
up. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Don't
but
worry.
it's hard. But it's
Yeah.
hard. You have to understand you're selling good stuff.
I'll tell you,
And
hey,
for
the store's closed right now. So nah.
uh, and like you saw it, like your logos for the Volkswagen and Porsche logos, that little PE is all over my engine and certain,
Oh,
parts of
thank
my
you.
build. And it's amazing to have that access. And I also appreciate the fact that when I was new to this hobby and just getting started, the little things that you did to like inspire and get me motivated and go, okay, girl, like here are some tools and
Yeah,
let's
yeah.
let's see you grow. Let's see you hit this ground running. So
No, definitely. One of my homies, like when I was getting into like painting, real quick, he was telling me like, look, you're gonna run into some issues as you're learning how to paint. And sometimes but the thing is you're gonna be in a zone where you don't know if it's you or the tools.
that's true.
So he was like, instead of wasting time trying to figure it all out, he's like, I'm gonna help you. Like, let's get the correct tools, even though they're gonna cost more or whatever. These are the best. But knowing that you're using the best spray guns, the best this and this and this, all you need to do is just dial it in, and boom, you're gonna excel faster. And I'm like, oh shoot. So I kind of always kept that in my mind, for anything and anybody, that I'm like, you know what, like this is definitely a big push when you give someone the right tools, for
Oh
the
yeah.
right job. So that's cool. I'm happy to hear. So
It hits you when you start using like a new airbrush or like 2K for the first time. And then
yeah,
you look at the build prior where you didn't use 2K, and then you look at the next one, you're like, holy cow.
you're like, damn, big
Yeah.
difference. Yeah,
Then you start to look at all these guys where like you go to shows and you see certain things and you're like, damn it, like
yeah,
you're like, he's probably just using 2K. Like
yeah, yeah. They knew all along.
you're
Yeah,
like, God,
oh, yeah.
it's too or like recently I'm like, there's Dave with the top hat.
Mhm.
This guy, he's partial why I told him initially. I never said what I was going to build, but when I saw he had like a military custom build Volkswagen Bug, and when I saw that, I was like, I'm going to build one day. I didn't expect to do what I did with it, but it's like seeing that, and one day I came up to him, I'm like, how are you painting this? And he goes, oh, I live in the area of the city. I step outside, I paint it with a rattle can. I go inside and it's done. And I'm like, no, that's bullshit. I'm like, you don't have dust, you don't have speckles. I'm like,
Mhm.
what are you doing? Because I'm like, that's impossible that you're using Tamiya paint and getting that result. So like there's a lot of people we get into back and forths and it's good. It's like there's still a lot of people, and then you realize, the
Yeah.
one thing I asked him, I said, you must not be spraying near any trees. He's like, yeah, there's no trees. I'm like, okay, fine. Here I am. Every time I spray outside, I look at it and I start seeing dust speckles. I'm like,
Oh,
no.
yeah, yeah, from the trees and stuff. Dang.
Yeah. So like that process of going from painting outside to painting
Mhm.
indoors too, I was like, okay,
Yeah.
if only I knew, but it's part of the
No, that's
process.
cool. We don't stop learning.
Yes.
So that's all good. Well, thank you again for being on the podcast. We'll definitely do a follow-up future episode, and just keep doing your thing.
I hope to continue to impress with my builds to come. And I hope
Yeah,
that personally, like I continue to get out of my comfort zone because I think
definitely.
that's where the most growth happens is when
Yeah.
you're
No, yeah, you have to step out of it right there.
yeah.
Dang.
And
All
I'm
right.
expecting more of your builds coming on the
Oh no,
competing
yeah,
team.
that for sure.
I'm
Yep.
I'm excited. And if you ever need like anything, hit us up for
Oh, for
sure.
sure, definitely.
Like
I know I will. I know I will, because you guys are like on a whole other level, and I'm like,
I
damn.
I feel bad, but it's like that's the best part about having a best friend that's a race fabricator and a scale modeler. You just call them and like, hi, I have a question. Like, I want you to take a minute of your
Like, what's
time.
up? Yeah.
Like 5 questions later, I'm like apologizing. I'm like, I'm so sorry. Okay, I'll let you go.
Uh,
So it's
nah,
good.
it's all good. Well,
But
thank
yeah,
you.
like we're all here to help the community grow. And the same way that you're helping like network and keep people in the loop, it's good.
Yeah, that's the thing. You have to keep it exciting, like let people know like what's kind of going on and just, you got people promoting shows and doing stuff. So it's like you want to help like spread that word too to reach more people
Yeah.
out there.
And then it's like imagine that every time you have a crazy build and you see someone else stepping up to do like a similar crazy build inside, you're like, oh, did I motivate someone? Maybe. You're
I
like,
know, right? Dang.
well, because you have to think about it too. Like, even with my builds and being new, every single time I put something on the table, now people are like, shit, like it's making it so other people have to step up to do like Sauber engine detailing. And that took
Mhm.
who knows how long, months
Yeah.
to get done, you
Nah,
know?
we need that though. We do. We everyone who's listening or watching this,
Oh, I'm
we can't
sorry.
we can't stay too relaxed.
Yeah.
We have to, how are we gonna push it forward? It's good when someone comes in, steps up and like does all this stuff. We have to be like, oh damn, I gotta get back on my toes and do my thing.
And vice versa. Like there's times I put something on the table, I'll have someone come up, they're like, did you think about doing this instead? And I'm like, shit, I never thought about that. They're like, we'll consider it. It's like, damn. And you're kind of like, you're looking at your build. There's two things. You're like, why didn't I think of that? And the other part is like, shit. You're like, what's that person's number? Come back. You're like,
Yeah,
come
yeah. Where'd he
back.
go? Yeah.
Yeah. What's your social media? Like, how can we keep in touch?
Hmm.
But yeah, so thank you. Keep me out of trouble at
Hmm.
the next show. Don't let me
Yeah.
buy anything.
All right.
Not at least for another show. And then by the second time I see you at a show, I think that's good enough of a spending break that I'm gonna want
Yeah,
more things.
right on.
I always say I'm like people always come up and they'll ask me like certain details, like where'd you get that from? I'm like Skill Riders. I'm like,
Oh, dang. Thanks.
but I don't tell
So,
them to wait until you're at the shows. I'm like, nope, just go online and get it. But we all know that once you're in front of us with the products, it's like game over.
dang.
So keep us out of trouble a little bit.
Just for a bit.
Yeah.
No, it's all good. Well,
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much.
And I hope you have a good night and we'll